in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's a wonderful, bright spring Thursday morning. We already have gremlins in the studio. So we'll see how this goes. We're live, so there's always the possibility of all kinds of things. There's our gremlin. We have Larry, Moe, and Curly that pop up from time to time there's Curly. So in any case, yes, there's the last one. Love our technical director, Emily Goodwin, made those because anytime something would go wrong, I would say, we have gremlins today. There's gremlins in the studio. It's live. We have stuff happen. But we are going to be live for the next 3 hours here with you, talking about topics having to do with autism and being more efficient, more effective working with our children who are on the autism spectrum. And whether you're a teacher, a parent, or a practitioner, we know that that's really important to you. I know that that's important to you as a parent and as a former teacher. You want to be a strong member of the team, right? So we're going to try to give you some tools and tips to do that. That most of what we talk about is ABA or ABA-based, applied behavior analysis, because we know that that's the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. We know that the Surgeon General refers to that as the gold standard of treatment for autism, and I know, because that's what my son had in our house, that's where you're going to be able to see real progress. And I know how important that was to me as a parent, and so I can only assume how important it is to you guys. But everything that we talk about here, and we do talk about it in terms of making ABA work within our life, and all the things that you got to have working, that you got to manage your stress level, you got to manage a schedule, you got to manage a small army, right? It's not easy, but it's doable, and that's why I'm here to tell you about that. I don't know so many things that we could be here for many more than 3 hours talking about all the things that I don't know. I'm not an expert in ABA. I am not an expert in behavior. I'm not an expert in autism, right? I like to say that I'm an expert in my child, but some days that's sketchy too, because he keeps growing and changing. But I am a parent who had 5 years of intensive ABA in my home, and I fondly refer to that as the autism miracle in my living room. My son was very profoundly affected by autism. He's now in very typical, completely included 3rd grade and excelling, and just the light of my life. There's still things that we work on. He finished his ABA program almost exactly a year ago when he turned 8, because he's about to turn 9, and we still work on things at home using skills, which I talk about on this show because I love it. But I get to sit and have conversations with my son. We get to talk about things. He said something the other day on Mother's Day morning that made me so excited, because one of the things that I've always wanted to know is how his brain works and what he sees and how he puts thoughts together. And I know that it's different for everyone, right? And it's different for all of our kids on the spectrum. But that's something that I've asked him and asked him and asked him since he was verbal, and he's never been able to verbalize that. But through a series of circumstances on Mother's Day morning, he was able to explain to me with a specific picture what it was and how he sees it and how he figures things out. It was so exciting to me me, that he can verbalize that to me now. And I'll tell you about that later on, because it was really cool. I got emotional, and I'm so excited, and I cried, and I hugged him, and it's just made me really excited. But I have conversations with my child on a regular basis where we talk about real things, that what he's feeling, what he notices, how, what he wants in the world, and how he looks at other people. And it's a huge gift. It's a huge gift, and I have that gift because of ABA. So of course, I want that for you, and I want it really badly for you. And I'm not the only one. There are a whole group of people that are involved in this show, and even more people outside our circle that we call upon to give you information. Because as I said, I'm not an expert, but I want to be your conduit to the experts. So if you ask a question, if you have a topic that you want us to cover more in depth, you guys were saying toileting. So on Tuesday, we had Dr. Amy Kenzer with us talking about toileting. And that's exactly the kind of thing I want to do for you. So if you guys write in and say, hey, I want to know more things about fine motor, then I'm going to get somebody in here to talk to you about fine motor. We had Valerie Vanneman, who's a special education lawyer, in here yesterday because you guys have been asking questions about IEPs and whatever it is that you need. And most importantly, well, not most importantly, but as a thing that's very high up on the list, let's say that, I want to know what's holding you back from having the ABA program that you should have. I know a lot of you are out there who are having 10, 15 hours of ABA, but you're feeling like you really should be at that 35, 40 mark, right? So I want to hear from you why. What's holding you back? Is it just the funding, or is it access to a provider? Is it that there aren't enough therapists? What's holding you back? Because let's work on that. And don't be afraid, whatever it is, if we throw it out there, maybe with all of our collective brains, we can start to sort it out. You're not alone in this. I always like to remind you all of that, because I remember early on, I really felt like I was alone. That's what it felt like, and I became convinced that that's what it was, that I was alone. And through the years, what I've seen is that I was never alone. I was never, ever alone. There were a network of people who were working on helping my child. And, they weren't always in my face saying, hey, we're trying to help your child, right? Whereas the people who weren't trying to help my child were in my face. And sometimes I couldn't see the people who were helping because the people who were not helping were up closer. But I want you to know that you have a network of people who want to help you help your child. And I'm one of those people, but I'm just one of them. So, bring your questions, bring your concerns, bring your complaints, bring your rage, bring your grief, bring whatever you have, and we'll take it on, right? Because it's all real. And I don't pretend to know what your circumstances are, because all of our circumstances are different. All of our kids are different. All of their outcomes are going to be different, but we do share something, and that's that we want what's best for our children. We want to help them to get the progress that is available to them, right? So lots of different ways that you can get in touch with me to let me know what it is that you need. Let's start with, if you're watching us on Autism Live, autism-live.com. You'll see that on your screen it says either live or rebroadcast. If it says live, there's a box that's there on your screen that says your questions, and it's activated while we're live. You can type your question there, hit enter. It shows up here for me in real time, and we can start to find the answer for you in real time. If you're watching and it says rebroadcast, or you're watching in any of the other myriads of ways that you can watch the show, you can still get in touch with us. In fact, there are plenty of ways to get in touch with us. You're seeing in front of you an email address. That's certainly a very quick way that you guys are starting to use. What's great about that is you can send it any time of day or night. You're watching the show, just type out your email, send it to this address. We will cover your question on the next available live show, but we'll also send you a typewritten response. So, and it's free. There's no cost associated with that at all. We want to be a resource for you. We want to help you. But you can also phone. Some people don't like to type. They like to phone. We're answering the phone phones from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, Pacific Standard Time here in the United States. If you'd like to, and the show is live, we can patch you in and you and I can have a conversation on the phone. So that's available to you. But if you don't want to, I get that. I totally get that. There are people waiting to take your phone call and to help you to figure out what it is that you need. You can also Skype in with us. And we've been doing this more and more, having people, experts and bloggers and all kinds of people Skype in with us. We love that. And so if you want to Skype in with us and ask your question, you certainly can. There's the information for you. I know for some of you overseas, Skype is a really efficient, inexpensive way to be in contact with us, and we love that. You can also talk to us on Facebook, talk about that immediate gratification, and not only do you get to talk to us, but you get to talk to everybody else. We have a new page on Facebook. I know it's like you guys were answering our questions on another page and are still answering them there, but we'd really love for you to answer them on the Autism Live Facebook page. And while you're there, if you'd give us a like, we certainly appreciate that. And you can also tweet us now. I'm picking up speed on the tweet thing. I'm not as proficient as many of you are. Be patient with me. I'm in Twitter school. Tweeting with my feet. I don't know where that came from. I'm not. Tweeting with my fingers. But in any case, lots of ways to get in touch with us. But I mentioned that there were other ways to watch us. I want to remind you that you can be watching us on blip.tv, pausing, rewinding, coming back to something, subscribing, searching a topic, a really good, if you're just finding us and you go, well, today's topics are great, but I really need to know information about feeding issues. You can go in there and type in feeding issues and it'll tell you what day or days that we covered that, and you can watch that segment. Really helpful. You can do the same thing on YouTube. We have our own channel there, which is quite lovely. I know many of you really enjoy watching on YouTube, and of course, you can also download us for free now on iTunes, which is wonderful. And very soon, you'll be able to download the audio-only portion of the show, so you can take us running, hiking, jogging, walking, or in the car, because this is a perfect example of you guys asked for this, and so we're going to deliver it to you. And by the way, you can watch us on Ustream as well now. So just another place that you can watch us. We want to thank Ustream for that. And if there's another way that you would like to see us, please let us know. We like to be educated by you, and we know that you know things that we haven't even thought of yet. So tell us. Don't make us read your mind. If there's something that's going to work better for you, let us know. All right. So we've covered all that. It's time for the jargon of the day. This is the time of day when we take one word, one phrase, one anagram, and we demystify it, because we've got to make friends with the jargon. It's one of those things, I know, I railed against it. I was like, let's just talk in plain English so that I can understand what's happening. And then I came to the day when I was like, they're not going to switch it for me. These experts, they're going to keep using these terms and they're going to add on to them, and I better figure them out. If I want to be a strong member of the team, I better start to get some of these terms under my belt so that I can be using them and understanding them. Expressive and receptive, right? We have to be able to use them and understand them when somebody else says them. So we do it like we teach our kids, a little bit at a time, so that it doesn't get to the point where it's miserable, right? And we get to make fun of them too. I love to give you the actual definition and sometimes poke fun of the fact that, it's virtually understandable. Not always, but some of the time. And then we give you a much user-friendly but less specific term. You've crossed over to the dark side when you start liking the actual definition more than the working definition. That's when you've arrived with the jargon. Sometimes I'm there with some of the words. Some of them I'm still a little lost in the woods, but that's okay. It's a work in progress, right? Okay, today's anagram, our alphabet land that we're in, really useful to you. All right, it is FBA. This is one to get completely in your arsenal and know it frontwards, backwards, sidewards, whatever, because when you're in trouble, this is what you're going to ask for. This is the first thing that's going to come off your mouth, out of your mouth when you're in trouble. with autism. Your child is doing something that you go, oh my gosh, I'm in fear. Your child is doing something where they're going to lose their placement in school. Your child is doing something where they're losing friends. All of these things, you're going to ask for an FBA. So what is it? FBA stands for Functional Behavior Assessment. For the longest time, I was like, that FOB thing, that FAB thing, that FUB, what is it? That thing, right? FBA. Functional Behavior Assessment. And it's a multi-step problem-solving assessment process designed to determine the function of a behavior. All right, so here is our working definition: an essential process that helps us understand why a challenging behavior is happening so that we can change it effectively. Okay, you're driving your car, right? And your car's making a funny little noise, right? And you go, oh, I probably should get that looked at. Right? Isn't that the first thing that comes into your head? It starts to make a little noise and you go, oh, I probably should get that looked at. Now, some of us take it right away and take it to a mechanic and say, hey, it's making a funny noise. Others of us, myself, wait until the car is functioning so poorly that I have to take it to the mechanic, right? But in both of these scenarios, the vast majority of us end up the same place, at the mechanic. Why is that? Why exactly is that we go to the mechanic for the car? Why don't we just pull over and start pulling parts out and changing them? Because that would not be efficient, it would not be effective, and we are not experts at cars, right? I'm not. Are you? You might be. Or you might know somebody who is, right? Who's had some training. That's entirely possible. But I think we're very willing to accept when we do not know how a car works. It's got a lot of moving parts. It's complicated, right? People go to school. My mother was telling me recently about having a family member change the brakes of a car. A very trusted and smart member of the family that does not have training as a mechanic, right? I'm not disparaging this person at all. They're brilliant. But to my knowledge, has not been trained. And I said, you know what? I don't think that's a good idea. I'm just going to say, when we're dealing with brakes, really, I want somebody who knows what they're, call me crazy, but I would prefer to have somebody who knows what they're doing and has gone to school and gotten a little certificate that says they know how to change brakes. I don't know, perhaps that's just me. But I think that most of you would agree with me, right? That we don't want to mess around with things like that because it's too important. Our safety, our children's safety, it's too important. We want to have somebody who knows what they're doing. And of course, you see my point. Here's your child and you got a little behavior going, right? Something that maybe, maybe it immediately goes to this is critical, but sometimes it's just something that's happening and you go, I don't know where that behavior came from, right? But a lot of times, instead of doing like we do with our car, where we go, I'm not an expert in mechanics, I'm not an expert in behavior either, but a lot of times we decide to monkey with the behavior ourselves. Okay, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But when we get to that point where it's critical with the car, we don't mess around anymore, right? I'm saying it's the same thing with behavior. It has to be diagnosed. If something is happening, the behavior, we got to go in and have a professional do an FBA so that they can figure out why is this behavior happening. It's the same thing with a car. You might think to yourself, oh, well, it's the alternator. Right? It seems like to me it's the alternator. I don't know why I think that, but it seems like the alternator. You go in and you say to the mechanic, I think it might be the alternator because this, and this is happening. And the mechanic says, what does he say? They go, oh, okay, I'll change the alternator because they say, let me take a look at it. Right? Same thing with behavior. Same exact thing. In fact, you go in, you find a BCBA or a psychologist and you go to them and say, my child is engaging in this behavior, and they ask you questions about it. And you can even say, I think this is happening because. And the first thing that they're going to say back to you after they've interviewed you for everything that they can tell you is, let me take a look at the behavior. And they do, to figure out what the function of the behavior is. The one thing that we know for sure is that all behaviors have a function, especially if it's something that's happening again and again and again. then we know that there's some sort of paycheck for that behavior. It's being reinforced in some way, because we just don't do things again and again and again unless there is some sort of payoff for it. So what they do in an FBA is it's a multi-step process where they figure out what is the function of this behavior. You know, Susie is biting. Well, let's figure out what kind of a payoff she's getting for biting, because once we know what the payoff is, then like the good mechanic, we know which parts to rearrange or replace or fix. That maybe Susie is biting because she's having a sensory issue with her teeth, and we need to give her something else to bite on that's appropriate instead of Lucy's leg. Right? And over time, we can fade that out too. But if Susie is biting Lucy because she wants attention, then giving her a bitey toy to bite on it's just going to increase how often she's biting the bitey toy and Lucy and now Miguel, right? So we have to be really careful when there is a challenging behavior about how we're going to intervene. We want to be effective. We want to be efficient. We don't want to waste time. Somebody could get hurt if we don't take care of it, potentially, right? So an FBA is done. It involves interviewing us, interviewing other people that are seeing the behavior, then looking at the behavior in order to figure out. It's a big multi-step test that really we want to have trained professionals do. I like to practice the whole FBA idea about finding the function of a behavior on my behaviors. But to see, because, figure out, okay, well, what is the function? Why am I doing this? Oh, the function of this behavior is this. So if I wanted to change it and play those kinds of games in my head, I know I got nothing but free time. But when it comes to my child, and especially challenging behavior, I don't rely on myself. I really don't. That's when I rely on the professionals, just like I do with my car. But an FBA, huge and important. If your child is of school age and they're going off to school, and your child is engaging in a behavior that puts their placement at risk, and let's be honest, that's what happens a lot. The child is hitting somebody else or banging their head against a desk, and you go to the next IEP meeting and they go, we're going to have to move this child into this classroom, not because of where they are academically, but because of where they are in terms of behavior. And that doesn't have to happen. As a parent, you have a right to request an FBA. They have to have somebody on staff who can do it. Once they have the FBA and they go, well, this particular behavior, when he's banging his head against the desk, the function of that behavior is this, so here is what we're going to do to change that. It gives everybody tools. Now, you would think that schools would automatically do that without you requesting. Unfortunately, that is rarely the case. Rarely the case. Because it's time consuming, somebody has to do it, it costs money. It's really a question of squeaky wheel. So be the squeaky wheel. If your child's engaging in a challenging behavior, whether it's at home or school, ask for an FBA. If it's school, they're going to have somebody do it and it's not going to cost you anything. If it's at home, it is probably going to cost you something if you don't already have a team of people that you're working with. But I got to tell you, so worth it. All of these behaviors that you're dealing with right now, one by one, right? Don't tackle them all at once, but one by one, you could be changing those behaviors. But it starts with an FBA, functional behavior assessment. We're looking for the function of the behavior. Until we know the function of the behavior, we're really not going to be very effective and efficient changing that behavior. Okay, FBA, it's our word for the day. And don't have family members change your brakes. I'm just saying. Okay, we always have a question of the day for you. Our question of the day today, sometimes we give you one that just because it's good to fantasize. It's good to think about what if. It's good to be in that headspace sometimes. It's a little mini vacation in your head. So we want to know today, if you could go anywhere, where would you go? And, different things for different people, but we talk about reinforcement all the time, about we want to reinforce our kids with things that are really reinforcing. So where's a place that you could go that would be really reinforcing to you? Even if it gives you 3 minutes, a couple of weeks ago when the lottery was so huge and what was like $500 million, some ridiculous amount of money. And people were in different camps saying, oh, well, I'm going to buy a ticket, or I'm going to buy a part of a ticket. And other people were saying, well, it's just ridiculousness. What are the odds that you're going to win? And what I heard and what my husband and I said was that we spent $10 on the lottery tickets, because if we were going to go to a movie, which would last 2.5 hours, and we were going to go together, it would be so much more than $10, right? And we had a full 24 hours after we spent our $10 on tickets where we dreamt of how we would spend that money if we won. And we got 24 hours of enjoyment walking around going, oh, and you know what else I would do? Oh, I would do this for this person, and I would do that for person. And it just lifted our mood. It was like a 24-hour vacation. And yes, at the end, we didn't win, which, you know, we were pretty sure that we weren't going to win, but we still had that 24 hours where I'll be honest with you, you know, they say that, you know, when people say, oh, I'd like to have $1 million, that really they're not saying they want $1 million. They want to feel the feelings that $1 million would come with. So, you know, maybe we can't get you to Aruba, but if that's where you want to go and you get 5 minutes to think about, oh, I'd like to go to Aruba, and it changes where your headspace is at for the day, or for even 5 minutes, it's that mini vacation in your head. So where would you like to go? My husband and I were talking about this all last week, and in particular yesterday. I have never been overseas. I'm very much a home girl, and have, you know, I've lived in a lot of different places in the United States, but I've never been overseas. And I've been doing the family genealogy and finding out, I thought that my relatives were mostly Irish, and I do have Irish relatives, but I have a lot of relatives from Scotland, and this is a new thing to me that I did not even know. And I'm doing my husband's genealogy as well, on his father's side, and seeing that they go back to Scotland also. So we have this new passion that we want to go to Scotland and see the castles in Scotland. And it makes us happy when we talk about it. I don't know when and if we will get there, but it makes us happy to talk about it. And whenever we can find something 5 minutes away from autism with no cost to dream about it, it's a good thing, right? So where would you like to go? If you could go anywhere, where would you like to go? Love to hear that from you. We'll check in later on today to see what your viewer response, and we never got to yesterday's viewer response, so we'll do that also. By the way, you can tell us your response on Facebook, you can tell us on Twitter, you can write in, phone in, all of those different things. Okay, we also always have a topic of the day for you. And today, as last week, it is ABA for beginners. We're going back to the beginning, going back to basics, and that's always a good thing. I promise we won't have it be the topic of the week for next week, but for this week, ABA for beginners again. And today, our schedule is really full. Some of the things we're going to be talking about today, we're going to talk about compliance. Of course, we'll do the myth of the day, and I'm really excited because we've been trying to get them in the studio for quite a while. But Greg from the Spot, I'm not even going to attempt to say his last name because I don't want to slaughter it, but it looks like a good Russian name. But in any case, Greg is going to be with us from the Spot. We've talked about them before on the show, and sometimes we run a promo for them. I like to think of it as the Facebook for autism, and they have an amazing site where you can connect with people. You know, I'm always saying to you how important it is to have a local support group and to have a global support group so that you can be asking questions, getting the support you need, and that in a lot of ways the Spot really can be both of those for you. So a really wonderful thing, plus which they have forums in which you can start a topic and be talking about a specific thing. And they have a great opportunity for teenagers and young adults who are on the spectrum to be talking to each other. I think that's remarkable. And two young men right after college started this site, the Spot, and their story is great and what they're trying to do is great. So in any case, we're going to have Greg, I think it's just Greg, but maybe it's both of them. We'll see. But that's during the 11 o'clock hour. They're going to be here with us in the studio, which is awesome. So that's our schedule, as it were, for today, but a lot of different things within that we're going to be talking about, also showing the A word. And I want to remind you that we love it when you participate. So phone in, call in, email in, whatever your preference is. But if there is, we have our schedule, but your questions take precedent over that. So we're going to take a break. Stick with us, and we'll be back with a compliance tip.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope.
They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're talking about compliance right now. And I always like to say that compliance equals everything, right? We love it when we have compliance from our children. It makes our life easier. It makes their life easier. Everybody's happier, and there's so much more you can get done when you have compliance. I mean, just even taking the smallest task of, you know, if you were going to get your child up and get them dressed and get their teeth brushed, and already I'm thinking, well, this is not the smallest task, right? But we do it every morning, right? Get our children up, get them dressed, and get them brush their teeth, have them have breakfast, and for those of us who have school-age children, we get them out the door. There's a lot of different things going on there, and imagine being able to do that with full compliance, what that would be like. Just like, talk about a place you want to go for a while. You know, that's a block we all want to live on, right? And how long would it take you to get your child, if you got them up and they got dressed and brushed their teeth and got their bag together and had their breakfast and were ready to go to school with total compliance? How long would that take versus however long it's taking you right now? Right? And for all of us, it's a different thing. Like maybe just getting your child awake is the difficult part, and that takes 20 minutes. And the brushing the teeth, not a problem, but for somebody else, getting the shoes on takes a half an hour, right? Because each step along the way, you got compliance issues. When we talk about on the show a lot about how to gain compliance and how we want to catch them doing something good and reinforce them, that it's all about the reinforcement, and how sometimes in the beginning you got to ask them to do something that they already want to do and reinforce them so that you are, you know, you're catching them doing the good thing that they already wanted to do. And we will talk about more about those kinds of things all the time on the show, but somebody had pointed out about, I'd really love to know in the moment, when I've gotten into a moment with my child and I'm not having compliance in the moment, I've asked them to do something and they're being stubborn and not doing it, how do we get compliance back in that moment? Assuming that we've already worked on and gotten some compliance and showed our child how reinforcing it is to get compliance, always along the way, we're always going to have pushback, right? We're going to have compliance issues because our child grows. And that's a wonderful thing, right? And as they grow and they get more independent, they're going to push back at a higher level with different things. Let's just take the teenage years, for example. And that's all kids, not just kids on the spectrum. So we have to be in a place where we understand and accept that non-compliance is going to come up again and again and again and again. It's not like we're going to get compliance under control at 2 and have it for the rest of our lives. And you know what? Really, realistically, we wouldn't even want that, right? You want your child to be asking questions, don't you? You want your child to be asserting themselves. You want them to try out different boundaries, and we're better to do it than at home with us as parents. But how do we find the happy medium where our child has some pushback, but we gain compliance again so that we can keep our kids on track, keep them safe, continue progress, right? Well, one of the things that we can do in the moment, we just talked about FBA and how we want to leave that to the professionals. But I said, I like to, think of the things that I'm doing and from time to time practice on myself and think, okay, I'm doing this, what's my payoff? Even this morning, I was thinking about the fact that I, continue to not bring a lunch to work. And this is not a good behavior. I should be packing my lunch every morning, but, asking myself, what is the payoff for not bringing the lunch? And, and then going, oh, I see exactly what the payoff is for not eating lunch. Then when I eat the late lunch, I get to eat a bunch of things that are not good for Shannon, and there's my payoff. But I go, oh, I'm starving. I have to eat something. Oh, I guess I'll eat this, right? So there's the payoff, and I need to change that so that I can change this behavior. Well, in the moment with your child, let's say that you've asked your child to do something like get in the car. And you've had a fairly compliant child, and now suddenly the child, no compliance. Really important that we, take that emotional divorce that we talk about all the time, about pulling ourselves back and not getting into the frustration and the fear and the anger and the loss of control feelings, right? They're all going to be there. Right, we're just going to say, okay, the child's over here engaging in the behavior, the emotions are over here, and our thinking brain is still here. We're making the emotional divorce, putting these things separate. Because being in all those emotions while they're going to happen is not going to help us to change the behavior. You're trying to get the child to the car, the child stands there and says, no, I just had this happen to me like a week ago. And I was standing there going, get in the car. The nag, 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 nag. Nagging doesn't work. And if you've asked your child to do something and your child is standing there saying no, which is what my child was doing. We'd already left the house. The door to the house was locked. It wasn't like he could go anyplace else. And this is not like my child anymore, mind you, but he's learning and growing. He's about to be 9. I have to expect that these things are going to happen. And I said, we're going to the store. And he said, no, I don't want to go. And I was like, why is this happening? And all these emotions. And I started to nag and said, you're going to go and you're going to get in the car. And I was about to say, or else, right? Because we always want to go to punishment. And then the higher self kicked in and went, okay, you know that you always want to nag, and you know that you always want to jump to punishment, and how often has that ever worked? Oh, right. It doesn't work, right? So then in that moment, what I started doing was looking at the behavior that he was engaging in and saying, what is the payoff? What is the payoff for him in saying no? And what is the payoff that I have offered him for complying? And are they equal and even, or is one higher than the other? Because the truth of the matter is, in that moment, we have to make what we're offering for being compliant better than what they're getting by being not compliant, right? And I can stand there and argue with him until the cows come home and deliver their milk and have babies and make cheese with the milk. But, unless I'm going to physically pick him up if it's less rewarding for him to be if it's more rewarding for him to be non-compliant, if it's less rewarding for him to be compliant, it's not going to happen, right? So in that moment, I go, oh, right, I know this. So, and I realized that by being not compliant, what he was doing was he was getting a whole bunch of attention, and he was getting to escape from going someplace that he didn't want to go. And there are times when our kids are going to have to do things that they don't want to do, right? There are times that we have to do things that we don't want to do. But how do you make yourself do something that you want to do? Don't you concentrate on what the reward is? Sometimes the reward is just getting it over. I did not want to have to do the taxes this year. I just did not want to have to do it. But I finally said, okay, I got to sit down. I've got to sit down and do these because I'm going to feel the relief. And, you know, it's always me that gets stuck doing the taxes. And even my husband was saying to me, if you'll just do it, here's what we'll do. I will take Jem and we'll go do something else so that nobody bothers you while you're doing the taxes. And I'll cook dinner and I'll, you know, do all the dishes and you won't have to do anything else. And I can't remember, there was some other big reward too. I don't remember what it was, but that, you know, maybe I got to decide what we watched on TV that night. I don't know, but it was, yeah, I just need to do it. And all these things, all the good things will come when I'm done with the taxes. It's the same thing for our kids, right? And so what I did in the moment was I stopped, and we want to be really careful that we don't reinforce the escape and we don't reinforce the attention thing, right? Because the last thing that we want to do is give in that moment and reward the less than perfect behavior, right? So here's my son saying, no, I'm not going. And so in that moment, I got to change things, right? So I had to ask him to do something that I knew. I had to change my body posture, first of all, and my face. So what I did, because he's older and he has the ability to understand, I said, you know what? I'm really sorry. I hear you. I hear that you don't want to go, that you were just doing something that you wanted to do, and that we've interrupted your time. Now he's been heard. And for my son, that's a very big deal. Not for all children, but it was like, oh, so his defensive posture, his body changed. Right? And now I got to go back to step one, which is catch him doing something good. So I deliberately pretended to drop my keys. So I said to him, I'm sorry, I know you don't want to go, and I'm interrupting something. And then I dropped my keys. And he was standing there. I said, could you do me a favor? Could you pick up my keys? My back hurts. So he bends over, he picks up the keys, and he hands them to me. And I said, thank you. You're such a good boy. I really appreciate how you did it. And now he gives me a hug because now I've praised him. And while I'm hugging him, I said to him, you know what? You know what would be really fun if we go to the store and then when we come back, if you and I could do this, this, and this. And he said, we could do that? And I said, yeah, but we have to go to the store now. So how about you go and get in the car, and then when we come back, we'll do this. And he tootled off to the car. So, really important that in the moment we take the emotional divorce, take a second to think, why is the child engaging in this behavior right now and choosing not to be compliant? Are they not being heard? Are they escaping doing something that we're asking them to do? Are they needing more attention? I mean, it could be all of the above. Do they understand what it is that we're asking them to do? Do we need to rephrase? And once we get a grip on what's the real issue here, what's the real issue here? And we see, here is what is reinforcing this behavior, and here's what I'm offering, which is sometimes nothing. A lot of times we're just asking them to be compliant when it isn't easy for them and offering them nothing. I had just said, come on, we got to get in the car and go to the store. Well, why on earth would he want to do that when he was having an opportunity to play with his Legos, right? And we can be sly about it because what I offered to do with him afterwards was something that I was going to do anyway. right? But I got him into the car, and it wasn't a battle, and he wasn't miserable the whole time that we were at the store, and our lives got to go on. So apply that kind of thinking when you get into an issue where your child is not being compliant. Give yourself a moment. Think, what is the function of this lack of compliance? What can I offer? Have something in the middle that changes it up so that we're not linking up when you misbehave and say I'm not going to be compliant, that as a result of that behavior you get something else. So that dropping the keys was the distraction for something else that I could then praise him for picking up the keys and saying, what a good boy you are. What a wonderful boy you are. You know, as a result of that, when we come back from the store, I'd like to do X, Y, and Z with you. Oh, okay. You know, so now he feels like that's all coming because of the keys dropping, not as a result of this, because I don't want to reinforce that, right? We can get compliance with our children, but it has more to do with what we do than what they do. It's really hard for me, you guys, because I just want compliance, and I want that. I don't want to have to work for it. But the truth of the matter is that if I think about reinforcing him for being compliant, it's ever so much quicker. If I had stood there and threatened him with 68 kinds of punishment and nagged at him, we would still be standing there, and he would never have gotten into the car. I would have had to pick him up and put him in the car. Who wants to do that, right? It's not what I want. It's not what you want. In any case, so that's our compliance tip for the day. You know, take it and use it and try it, and please write to us and let us know. Did it work for you? Was there a part of it that you're not clear about? You know, how is it working in your house with your child? That's really what we want to know. And then we'll continue that conversation. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about our tip for generalization this week, how important generalization is. Stick with us.
Mostly the behavior started at night, but it was invading the day, where he would just speak one syllable and babble and pace around.
When she was a year old, she lost speech. She did never seem to request me for anything, even for food. He told me over the phone that I should just put her in an institution. I was devastated. What's an institution? A hospital. Yeah, isn't that nice?
He told me that it was possible or likely that Ruffin would never be employed, that he would never work productively, that he would not know that I loved him, nor would he love me, nor would he be likely to marry.
There's a 50% chance that he won't be able to talk at all, but if he does talk, he will only be able to, you know, make simple desire requests. I want, things like that. And probably by the time he was 10, he'd be in a home.
Doreen told me that he would recover, and Doreen told me that he would go to regular kindergarten.
I really have a very normal kid now, and lots of normal worries, but not extraordinary ones.
My name is Deli Popola, and I'm one of the creators of TheOutSpot.com. TheOutSpot.com is an online support system for families and specialists who are affected by autism across the whole world. Share inspirational stories, find resources in their area. Hope you can join.
Welcome back, everyone. We had a question during the break, and I'm going to put it where you guys can show it. Also want to say that what's great that this person wrote in and included their email with their question, which I've deleted before I'm showing it to all of you, and we will delete it before, but it makes it possible for us to get back to you. But I'm going to answer it here on the air, and then we'll also send you a written response. So perfect way to do it, and please know that we will protect your information. So the question: Hi, Shannon. My son is is 8 years old. He was diagnosed with autism at 5, late. How do I get started creating an ABA program for my son? He is in 2nd grade and receives speech, OT, and PT at school. He gets pulled out of his classes for reading and math and has a one-on-one aide. My husband and I want to see him by 5th grade independent in the classroom. Maybe ABA can help him gain the independence in the classroom. Is ABA used for kids who have really challenging behavior? Is ABA expensive? Is my son at 8 too old for ABA to be effective? And who can I contact to locate an ABA specialist in the Westchester, Pennsylvania area? Okay, these are all fabulous questions. So thank you so much for writing in. And okay. Let's start with, how do I get started creating an ABA program for my son, which kind of goes hand in hand with some of the questions that you asked at the end. There are lots of different ways to start. I really encourage you to go to your local support autism group, and if you haven't found one, go on places like Yahoo, and I'm trying to think what some of the other ones. You can go on the Hotspot. We're going to have Greg from the Hotspot on. There might be somebody from the Westchester, Pennsylvania area that can tell you information on the Hotspot. But I'm trying to think of, and why do I have a complete and total? There's Google groups, there's Cafe Mom groups. I have several on Yahoo. There's also some that are on Facebook. Might be worthwhile to go into your Facebook and put in Autism Westchester, Pennsylvania, and see what comes up on Facebook, because there might be a group already. Same thing on Google, Google groups and Yahoo groups. You can find a local one. Then for a more global one, there are lots of different groups. TACA, T-A-C-A, which is www.tacanow.org. You can go to their website and they'll tell you where they have their individual groups, but they also have global groups on Facebook and on, I think it's Yahoo groups. But really good to have a local support group, really good to have a more global one. Again, Hotspot, we're having Greg later on this in this show at 11 o'clock to talk about what they do. To ask who the ABA providers are around you. I always encourage you to go and look at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders to see where their closest one is. But I don't believe, and I'll have to double check, but I think the closest is going to be in New York to you. But in any case, ask them who the ABA providers are. And I would get yourself on a waiting list, but also while you're in your local support group, talk to them about how they get it funded. Who's doing ABA, where are they getting it from, and how are they getting it funded? Are they, because depends on who your insurance provider is, lots of different questions. And I'm going to look up during the next break what the insurance laws are in Pennsylvania, because off the top of my head, I don't know. But in any case, get on a waiting list. Even if when the time comes, you don't have your funding, better to be on the list than not on the list. Just like do that first thing. Because in some places, the waiting list is long and you don't want to wait any longer than you have to. Is ABA expensive? Yes. It is so expensive that no one can afford it. So how are we all working it out? Through myriads of different ways. Don't let expensive stop you, right? If you forge ahead and say, we're going to figure that out as we go along, it happens. And miraculously, it does. A lot of people start out and go, oh, it's expensive, there's no way we can afford it, and they stop. I want to encourage you to just ignore that for a minute. Know that somehow you're going to make it work, because there are lots of different ways to make it work. But yes, it's expensive and no one can afford it. No one can afford it. It's that expensive. We get a regular, we don't anymore because my son is done with his ABA, but we used to get a regular statement from the state of California letting us know what the cost of ABA was for our child. And I don't even want to tell you because it's more than a house. You know what I'm saying? More than a house paid off, so it's ridiculously expensive, but it's absolutely worth every single penny. And the state was paying for it because they knew that too, that they could pay that amount for ABA therapy for my son, or they could pay millions of dollars across his lifetime that they're not going to have to pay as a result. Okay, So get on a waiting list, but while you're on the waiting list, I'm going to encourage you to do CARD e-learning. There's actually two of them now. There's CARD e-learning and there's a parent e-learning. I did the regular CARD e-learning, and that's what any therapist coming into the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, the training that they would have had to start working with a child. There's a shorter version now, the parent one, which I have not done yet, and I want to do it to see what it's like, but it's shorter and maybe better for you. So you kind of have a choice there, but it's going to train you in ABA techniques so that you're going to be able to start immediately. Like, you could sit down and watch an hour of the tapes and begin to understand and start to utilize these things for your child immediately. By the way, the CARD e-learning is a great thing to give to whoever your child's one-on-one aide is, to help them to be more effective with your child as well. Is your son too old at 8 to benefit and have it be effective? No. It is not too late. That we can work on strengthening a child's skills at any age. We literally have adults who are using ABA and gaining all kinds of skills, and I'm talking about adults on the spectrum. But people use ABA who are not on the spectrum for all ages and skill abilities. So there is no time when you age out of ABA. We like to tell people to start as early as possible because you have less to catch up on. So better to start at 8 than at 10, right? And I don't want to make any guesses here, but if your child is 8 and diagnosed at 5, then usually that suggests, when people don't get diagnosed until 5, that they have better capabilities, that they're perhaps more high functioning, because it's the more severe that tends to get diagnosed earlier. That's not as much true anymore. They're starting to catch it earlier and earlier in everybody. But usually if a child isn't diagnosed till later, it means that they had some skills, and so it made it difficult for everybody to recognize. So I think that having the benefit of ABA at this point could be huge benefit. And looking through here, yeah, can ABA help to gain independence in the classroom? Absolutely. Is ABA used only for kids who have really challenging behavior? Not at all. They use ABA for the principles of ABA for Olympic athletes to help them to get more proficient at the things that they need to do to get to the level that they need to get to. So it isn't just for challenging behavior, but it's very effective for challenging behavior, let's say that. Okay, so during the break, I'm going to look to see what your insurance laws are in Pennsylvania, see if I can glean a little bit about that. And I'm also going to be asking some people around here if there's people that they can recommend to you for ABA in Westchester, Pennsylvania. But what I'm also hearing here in the things that you write in, if your child got the diagnosis at 5 and has a one-on-one aide, then you're doing your job. You're getting it done. And if you add ABA into this mix, I think you're going to be really pleased with what you see, that you're going to see some progress very quickly, is my feeling on that. So I'm looking to see if there's anything else in here that I haven't left out. But yep, it's expensive. But let's take a look at what Pennsylvania provides, and then take a look at what your insurance is. But I definitely think having some ABA is really going to help you. What I'll be concerned about is what is your school like in terms of, are they willing to uphold ABA? Is the aide going to be, if you were to say to the aide, hey, would you like to do a training online to learn about ABA? They may already know some things about ABA. They might be really excited, or they might be reticent. I'm going to hope that they're excited about it. So we're going to take a break. Oh, no, we're going to go to the A word. And while we're at the A word, I'm going to do a little bit more research on your neck of the woods, see what I can find out. And then later on in the next hour, we'll do the generalization tip that we were going to do. But let's take a look at the A word. The A word, an amazing documentary that's being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders about a little boy who was diagnosed very early, at the age of 2. Not even 2.5 really, that he was diagnosed. And he started his ABA therapy. He's about to turn 3 at the point that we're watching today. And he's had tremendous progress. And I want you to particularly pay attention during this clip to the fact that he's making really good spontaneous eye contact that looks really natural. He's not staring in a fixed gaze. He's looking at somebody to gauge their reaction, looking back at what he's doing. When he talks to people, he looks at people in a very natural way. We see that he's working on a bunch of different programs about personal identification, about waiting. It's a little bit hard for him, but he's working on waiting, about appropriately gaining somebody's attention by tapping them on the shoulder and saying their name, and getting reinforced for when he does these things properly. So take a look at the A word, and we'll come back with some more information after the A word.
No, really, come here, trust me this time. I won't throw you. No, really, come here, trust me this time. I won't throw you. No, really, this time trust me.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Woo! If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Yay! If you're happy and you know it, then your face will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Stomp your feet. Say hooray. Hooray! Good job. Come here. So we just taught that song to him last week. Or I did. Daddy. 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 He's outside. Who's upside down? Who's upside down? Who's upside down? Touch your head. Touch your ears. I got you again. Oh, you're so easy. Touch your nose. Touch your eyes. Got you again.
Today, Jack Riley is really playful, but isn't interested in playing with any of his toys. He's more interested in social games. So what Jessica does is integrate his lessons in the play, such as body parts.
Touch your head. What's your name? Good. How old are you? 2. Good job. What sound does a lion make? Roar. 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 What sound does a bear make? Grr, grr, grr. What sound does a Jack Riley make? That's a hard one. I want to see if you'd make up something. I want to see if you'd make something up. What's up, dude? Nice hands? You want me to play? Play. You want me to play? Play. Play? Okay, I'll play. You just have to ask. Hey, Suzanne, can I try something? Yeah. Can I try having him get your attention? I want to see if he'll actually generalize. Okay. Okay, Suzanne's going to be in charge of the pillow sandwiches now. If you want them, you need to ask her. Look. Look, look, look. Do you want a pillow sandwich? Oh, look at the pillows. Who has the pillows? Hey, Jess. Hey, Bear. Hey, Susan. Yes? Okay, come here. Hey, Bear. Hey, Susan. Yes? Okay. We're good. Sandwiches. Can we work on waiting too? You can pause it whenever and just have him wait. Okay, hey, we're gonna wait. Wait.
That's not good.
You're gonna try again? You gotta do nice waiting and then we can watch the video, okay?
Nice waiting. Nice waiting. Nice. That's nice touch. Soft touch. Nice touching.
What do you see? You see letters? I see letters.
I see letters.
Good waiting. Okay.
Okay.
You can watch it now.
So we started? Yeah, there. Alphabetical, he's jumping. Okay, pause.
Okay, we're gonna wait. Wait.
Nice waiting. Nice waiting.
That's better. Good job.
Nice waiting.
All right, perfect. Good
Okay.
job.
Nice waiting, buddy.
That's much better.
I have a crush on my son. I'm done. We'll watch him later, okay? We'll watch him later. We'll watch him later. No, we'll watch it later. No. Jack, settle down. Settle down. We'll watch computer later. It's not going anywhere.
Jack Riley is upset because the fun activity, to him, has abruptly stopped. Transitioning is anxiety-ridden for Jack Riley because he has difficulty in anticipating what will happen next. In general, though, transitioning for kids is abstract and difficult to grasp.
Hey, should we go jump a little bit somewhere? What do you want to do? Should we play upwards? Should we go see Daddy? Ready? Oh! Just kidding. Should we go? Should we go? Should we go? Should we go?
Jack Riley quickly gets over being upset once a new fun activity occurs. He now sees that there are other fun things to do. The issue was that he doesn't know that he will have access to something fun again, but by practicing transitioning, he will eventually learn that just because the activity ends, it's not gone forever.
Now I know my ABCs. Now I know my ABCs. Next time, won't you sing with me? That was Master P. Diddy White Ice Dude. That's who did that.
Wow, is that gonna be your stage name, Jack Riley?
When you grow up, don't be a tool.
Oh man, Vanilla Ice. Wow, that brought me back to when I was a little girl. Very cool.
I love you, Jack Riley. I love you, Jack Riley. Bye-bye.
Daddy. Oh my God. Do you want to go see Daddy? Go see Daddy. Okay. We can go do some stuff with Daddy. You want to go do some stuff with Daddy? Go see Daddy. Okay, we can go do that.
Oh, no.
That's okay.
Jack, we don't touch this stuff. That's Grandma and Papa. Papa and Mama. Mama. You never get to meet Mama.
Mama.
Yeah.
Mama.
That's right.
Mommy.
And who's that?
Mommy.
Who's that? Who's that?
Daddy.
Daddy, that's right.
Mommy.
That's right.
Mommy.
You were only a promise then. You were only a promise.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We just watched the A Word, a wonderful documentary that's being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I hope you watched how much eye contact was happening there. Normally I would spend a little bit more time on that, but we had a question and I got some more information during the break. Want to start with and tell you where exactly I went so you can know where I got this information. I first went to the things that I tell you guys to do. I went to autismvotes.org and looked up to see where insurance reform is in Pennsylvania, since that's where the question was coming from. And lo and behold, you guys, according to what I found on the site, you guys have insurance reform and fairly good insurance reform. Now, the cursory check, and remember that we can't always look at this and know, but that you get up to $36,000 a year for ABA, which is not bad. and that it goes up to age 21, so your child hasn't aged out. In some states, unfortunately, a child gets to be 8 and they age out of when they'll pay for it, but that's not the case in Pennsylvania, so that's really good news. Also would let you know that sometimes people go, oh, $36,000, that's not going to get it done. But what I want you to know is that's just the beginning, because depending on your individual insurance plan, that if you look at it, there's something called the Federal Mental Health Parity Act. And what that does is, what we see is these states keep coming up with these different caps that, oh, they'll pay this much per year and this much per year. And that's all very well and good, but it isn't always the truth. And so if in your individual, and of course you'll need to look, because there are exclusions for certain plans, but you'll need to look at your individual insurance plan and see, but if there is a mental health portion of your insurance plan, that, for instance, if a child were to be in a car accident and have some sort of brain trauma that would require them to have therapies to help them to get better, whatever that cap is on that is what your actual cap is, because federal law overrides state law. And the federal law states, mental health parity says that if they'll pay it for some other kind of brain trauma, then they have to pay it for autism. How fabulous is that? So it's entirely possible that your limit is like $110,000 a year. But you'll need to check with your HR director about your individual plan, but your insurance has been on board now for a couple of years, so it's probably going to be easier for you to find that out from your HR director than for anybody else. And ask them, not only, am I covered for ABA for autism, but what is the brain health, mental health cap, so that you have an idea of what you have to work with. I also took a minute to go on autismspeaks.org to their communities tab to look up Pennsylvania. What I actually did was Googled ABA Pennsylvania, and it brought up a bunch of different things, but I went to the Autism Speaks community site so that I could look at all of the different ABA providers that were in Pennsylvania, and there are tons of them. Now, I'm, geographically challenged, so I don't know where Westchester is, but I saw that there were even several BCBAs in Westchester proper. So you're going to want to take a look at that, autismspeaks.org. You can go to their communities tab, or you could just Google ABA providers Westchester, Pennsylvania. That was how I actually got there. And then I took a minute to go to TACA Now, as I was saying to you, tacanow.org, and found out that there is a Pennsylvania chapter of TACA. And how fabulous is this? I don't know how close you are to Philadelphia, but in Philadelphia they have treatment and therapy scholarship programs sponsored by TACA. And there's a place for you to click to learn more about that. I don't know how far away of a drive that would be for you to get to Philadelphia, but that may be even more funding for you. For your child. And then if you scroll down, if you go to TACA and if you go to find a meeting, and then I clicked on Pennsylvania, and if you scroll down on that site, I'm seeing that there are several different meetings that are happening, including I'm seeing where this first one is, one in Newton Square, Pennsylvania, and they have autism books that you can borrow, and CDs and DVDs that can be checked out of their library. And they meet on the first Friday of each month. How wonderful is that? They have a Facebook group that is TACA Pennsylvania, so that you've got a group of people that can help you to figure out, okay, how do I work the funding? What's the best thing to do? And they're having a meeting on June 1st, reading comprehension for kids on the spectrum, with a speaker, Dr. Karen Kelly. That they're advertising here. They have coffee talk in a couple of different places, one in Warrington, Pennsylvania, one in Malvern, one in Plymouth. And they have a support group that is available to you in between different meetings, or if you're not close enough to one of those. So that's an awful lot of resources, not to overwhelm you, but I would personally, I would get signed up to be in some sort of support group and be asking them, since you have so many things to choose from in terms of the ABA providers in Pennsylvania, I would be asking the support group, how did you fund this and which group should I be with? Because all ABA is not the same. I wish I could tell you that it is, but there are people who are doing quality ABA out there, and there are people who are doing less than quality ABA. I'm sorry to go there, but that's the truth. And especially as we see insurance starting to fund it, there's going to be more and more of that, right? You got to make sure you're getting quality ABA. And one of the things, there are lots of different hallmarks to quality ABA. But one of the things in particular that we talk about is people who strive for generalization from day one. So in just a second here, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk about what generalization is. But I think a great thing to do in the beginning is to ask your local support group, who, if I were going to get ABA here, who do you guys recommend? And you're going to hear people respond back. And don't take just one person's word, right? Hear from a group of people. Even, you could say to somebody, can I come and see what ABA looks like in your home? Usually there's somebody who's going to say, okay, I know I've had people ask me that, and I've said, come on down. Come and check out what's happened in my house, because it's fascinating, I'm not having ABA in my house anymore because we graduated from that. But when I was always willing to have somebody come and watch and see what it looked like. And somebody had offered that to me too. So it's one of those things, and usually, some people are funny about it, and that's okay, but somebody probably is willing to let you come over and see. But in the meantime, I encourage you to be checking out CARD e-learning or the parent e-learning. And if you get on a waiting list, let's say you figure out your funding and you figure out who you're going to have be your provider, and you're on a 3-month waiting list while it takes the processing for the funding and all the evaluations. Don't wait in that 3 months. Do your CARD e-learning. You can start on skills and be doing these things in your home today. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Okay, I hope that provides some information. Of course, we're going to email all of this to you as well. But what a great parent you are in getting it done. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about generalization and why it is so important to a quality ABA program. Stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age, which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are three main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provide you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we've been talking about ABA and how important it is to be with a quality ABA provider, because not all ABA programs or providers are created equally, right? I always like to remind you guys that ABA was created a long time ago, and it was a method of changing people's behavior so that they lived healthier, happier, more productive lives. It was not invented specifically for autism, but what we discovered starting in the mid-'80s was that it is effective for autism. What a wonderful thing. And it's effective for all of our kids, whether they're 2 years old and having, struggling no language, or they're 8 years old, or they're 22 years old, or they're 48 years old, and wherever they are on the spectrum. ABA is really effective for our kids at encouraging and strengthening behaviors that are difficult but desirable, and for decreasing behaviors that are not desirable, that our child or teenager is engaged in, right? Or adults for that matter. But it's so important that, because ABA is expensive, that if we're going to devote, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of effort, but very worth it if you're doing quality ABA therapy, but therein lies the rub. It's got to be really quality ABA therapy. And quality ABA therapy, one of the hallmarks, there are a couple of different things that you can look at to kind of see if you're getting good ABA therapy. One is that it strives for generalization from day one. If your generalization is when you're teaching something to your child, but at some point your child takes what they learned and applies it to new and novel situations, so that the skill really becomes theirs. They haven't just learned this little thing by rote, they learned a global understanding of it so that they could go and apply it in situations in which it was never taught. There are so many different examples of this that we could think of, but let's say that you were teaching your child to say thank you, and you were teaching it in very specific circumstances, right? But what you want to create is a child who, wherever they go in the world, no matter what somebody says to them, when it's appropriate, they say thank you. Now, can you possibly teach every single instance of when a child is supposed to say thank you? No, it would take you the rest of your life, right? And you would still miss some, and that's not how we want to spend our time. But so what we try to do is train for generalization to begin with, which means that we're going to teach saying thank you in a variety of different appropriate situations with a variety of different people, with a variety of different things that come before it, so that regardless, at some point, the child generalizes the skills so that something happens and they very appropriately say thank you, even though they've never encountered this situation with this person ever before. That's generalization. I always like to say, you know, my mother was very good at teaching me generalization and planning for the beginning when she was teaching me how to drive a car, because she, you know, first she taught me at home with a can of peas and a can of corn, but then we went and got in her car, and then we got in my dad's car, and then we got in my neighbor's car, right? Because my mother didn't want me just to learn how to drive her car. She wanted me to learn how to drive on, and not just on the roads that were in our neighborhood. She wanted me to learn how to drive on any highway, on any road, anywhere in the world. Can she possibly have taught me all of that? No. She had to teach me the framework of it and be changing the ways things were so that I wasn't learning it in just one specific way, so that I then could apply that knowledge to a wide variety of circumstances. This is what we want to do with our children with everything we teach them. We want to plan for generalization from the beginning. The other example I like to use is that, because it's a place that we make a mistake a lot of the times, is that when we're toileting, that we, you know, because it can be so much work and it's aversive, and we stay home for a weekend and we do our, you know, potty party boot camp weekend, and but what happens sometimes, and we hear from parents and they go, well, you know, we did the potty training, but now my child can only poop in the potty at home. And what that is a failure to have planned for generalization. We were talking about this with Dr. Amy Kenzer on Tuesday. We did a full thing on toileting. You can search that on Blip TV or YouTube or iTunes. It was on Tuesday. But one of the things we talked about is how important it is that very quickly after we've gotten them to poop in our potty, to have them poop in the potty that's upstairs, to have them poop in the neighbor's potty, to have them poop in grandma's potty, so that they are being reinforced fairly quickly for the idea that we're not just pooping in this potty, we're pooping in all potties, so that when you're at the drugstore and suddenly your child says, you know, poop, have to poop, that you go to the bathroom and it's not this battle where your child is holding it in because it feels funny now pooping anyplace else than at home. So you want a provider, an ABA provider who has experience with autism, first of all. Not just any ABA provider, because there are a lot of ABA providers who don't deal in autism, okay? So you want one that deals specifically in autism, and one that has dealt with the kind of challenging behaviors that your child engages in, and somebody who plans for generalization from day one. If you're, you know, you should be regularly attending meetings with the people who are working with your child, and if they're not talking about generalization, ask about it, because maybe they're using a different word because you're a parent, but if you see that it's not being planned for and they're not changing things up, that's not the ABA provider that you want to be with, frankly. There's too much time and there's too much writing on it for your child to get bad or less than wonderful ABA therapy, right? Okay, so generalization, that important. One of the things that I wanted to talk about today is when we're teaching colors, that we're trying to teach colors to a child, and we're going to start with very simple colors, like maybe we start with red, and we've talked before on the show about how we can introduce red in a DTT format, that you just have red on a card and you put red down on the table and say to the child, give me red. There's only one thing there, and you might even prompt them, yes, it's red. You know, you're doing a full physical prompt and helping them to put it in your hand. Yes, it's red, it's fabulous, and you work your way up to the point where you've got a couple of different colors, right? And you're using different stimuli, and different people are doing it, so you're already planning for generalization. But not only, you know, do we want to do it in this setting, but we need to give this lesson legs, and fairly quickly. Take it out into the community. One of my favorite things that I would do with my son, and by the way, teaching all of the different things that you need to do for colors receptively, expressively, teaching is an interverbal, all of those lessons to be able to do it. The curriculum for it is in Skills, which I freely love and I use at home. So if you're looking for that information, it's all in Skills. You can go to skillsglobal.com and even sign up for a free trial for that. But in any case, you know, as you're taking it out, and it'll give you tips for generalization too. But what I remember is when my son was doing colors, we found any opportunity to do colors. And, you know, if he was learning the new color, it became, we were sort of like Sesame Street, that it was, we had the color of the day and the letter of the day and the number of the day, and everything we did surrounded those. So I specifically remember when he was learning yellow, wherever we went, whatever we did, we were constantly on the hunt for yellow. And I even had a sticker chart for him because we were trying to get him to tact, and tact is when you're contacting things in the environment and pointing them out. So I had a sticker chart that, you know, would have 10 little stickers on it that I carried in my purse. You can do this on your phone now. And if yellow was the color of the day, we would get in the car to go someplace, and I would say, okay, the color of the day is yellow. If you can point to 10 things that are yellow while we're at the grocery store, then at the end, I'm going to give you, you know, fill in the blank, right? Whatever's reinforcing to the child. So we would be in the grocery store, and it was like a treasure hunt. He's looking for yellow. And so he would sit there in the cart and he would go, yellow, right? And yellow. And I would go, yay, you get another sticker. That's wonderful. And we would also be counting. So how many stickers is that? That's 1, 2, 3 stickers. You got to have 10, right? And counting up to 10. And it was a way that he was noticing yellow in the environment. Could we teach anybody all the yellow things that are in a grocery store? There's no way, right? But once he began, we planned for generalization. He'd already seen, like, you know, 7 or 8 yellow things at home because we use different things to teach him yellow. So we get into the grocery store, and now he's on the hunt for it, and he's noticing light yellow, and he's noticing dark yellow, and does it qualify, and pointing it out. And then when he would point it out, I would put whatever the label for, yes, it's a banana, right? Yes, a banana is yellow. Yay, you get a sticker. Wonderful, right? So he's learning all different kinds of things in the grocery store, but we're generalizing yellow so that at some point he's going to go into the world and have just this global understanding of yellow. Really important to make it reinforcing, right? Our kids will generalize things even that we don't want them to learn. I've shared before on this show that I never, ever taught my son how to swear. I would never do that, right? Never in 1,000 years, but he picked it up. You know, my child is not the only one, right? And it was one of those horrible moments of, oh no, oh yay, oh no, oh yay. Yes, and there we are. Now, whenever anybody in my son's presence, he knows that he gets paid a quarter if somebody swears in front of him. So what he does, somebody swears and he says, cha-ching, right? And I don't know what it was that somebody did. You know how it is sometimes. And we went through something the other day that really was not my favorite thing, and my son's there going, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Well, you know, not my finest parenting moment. But in any case, generalization really, really important. And we can make it fun. And with colors, especially, we can make it a treasure hunt wherever we go. You can have the treasure hunt in your living room and say, you know, let's look at all the things that are red. I think making it only one color, making it the color of the day, really highlights it. Because if we say, okay, let's go into a store and I want you to point out all the colors to me, it's overwhelming, right? But if we go in and say, okay, what do you see that's green? Then suddenly, you know, I'm going to see some things, you're going to see some things, and you can even work on it in that way. You can prompt and say, I see something green over there. Do you see something that's green over there? And then they might go, yeah, I see this tag is green. And you go, oh, that's interesting because I was looking at this. Now, obviously, some of our little kids don't have that level of language, but they can point, or we can teach them to point. We can teach them to prompt. Another great skill, because we want those gestures. We want the pointing. So, and again, we can prompt and say, you know, I'm looking for something green, and you can bring the green card with you and be looking. And maybe the first time you have to do all of the prompting and show and point out, but it's still going to help them to generalize and realize that green is more than just the green on the card and the little frog statue that they have and the green pillow that they have. We want that global understanding. Okay, so that's our generalization tip for the day. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to look at your answers to the question of the day. Stick with us.
I'm Adele Nadowski, Director and Co-Creator of Skills. CARD e-learning is an online tool that has been developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD e-learning is the training that is delivered to the ABA therapists at CARD to train them on the principles of applied behavior analysis and to equip them with the knowledge they need to essentially deliver the ABA-based techniques during their therapy with the children that they work with. ABA has been proven scientifically to be the most effective intervention for children with autism. At this point, even the Surgeon General has come out with a statement suggesting just that. So we know that this is something that children with autism definitely need if they're going to improve and live the lives that we're hoping that they're going to be able to live. By being able to train people on this one particular method that we know works, and to be able to have all of your staff within your school settings on the same page, it allows you to take more of a multidisciplinary approach, and there's definite consistency going on within the team. It makes sure that every person involved with that child's treatment program, including the speech and language pathologist, the occupational therapist, the teachers, the aides, all of these individuals to be able to be trained so that they can all work together effectively with the child. Parents that are using CARD e-learning can use it either to train themselves, and then after having done that, they can implement different techniques with their child in order to teach new skills. But oftentimes parents might also be working either with an ABA provider, with a school, or they may have even hired their own therapist to deliver the intervention techniques. So CARD e-learning can be used either to collaborate with your school. It can also be used to train the therapists that are coming to the home of the parents, or it can also be shared with the ABA provider so that that provider can find out about it and perhaps implement it within their organization and train their staff. You can also do reporting for your organization. So you can actually look and find out which teachers are progressing, what their quiz scores are, and actually we can give you reports as well that will help you to compare the different teachers and their performances. CARD e-learning is really simple to use. You can log on to this as long as you have a computer, that's all you need, and an internet connection. And you can work on it any time of the day, anywhere that you're at. When you log on, you realize that right away. First of all, on the top of the page, there's a navigational tutorial. It's a how to use this page button. Simply by watching that video, it'll all kind of unfold in front of you, and it becomes extremely self-explanatory. CARD e-learning has 9 modules, and you can basically go through those at your own pace. You're going to be watching videos that are kind of like a storyboard with narration, but in addition to that, there's many different video clips of therapists actually implementing the techniques that are being described within the storyboard that you can also watch. And then of course you're able to pause, you're able to type notes right directly underneath the video that you're watching. You can save your notes, you can review them, and between each module you do take a quiz. And once you pass that quiz, you can go on to the next module. And then after you complete all of them, you have a final exam. And by completing the final exam and passing with a score of 85% or better, you will be given a certificate of completion. Let me show you how easy it is to use CARD e-learning.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Thursday. In just a little while, we're going to have a special guest, Greg from the Autspot, who's going to be with us talking about, I like to think of them as the Facebook for autism. We'll hear from him if that's accurate. And but it's a wonderful, wonderful place that you can go. It's a wonderful resource for information to be able to chat with people, join a forum, start a forum where you can be talking about specific ideas. And a lot of teenagers and young adults use it to talk to each other that are on the spectrum. It's a wonderful, wonderful resource started by two very young gentlemen, and their story is kind of fascinating. I promised you that we would do viewer response during this period of time. Our question today was, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? I'm loving the answers that you guys sent in, because it's different. It's different for all of us, right? Somebody who said, my grandson loves the beach, the sand, the water, so I'd take him there. Another person says Alaska would be beautiful. You know, I never think of going to Alaska, but you're right, it's absolutely beautiful. This was one that a couple of people wrote in. My kids want to go to Disney World so bad. Disney World and Disneyland, I gotta say, they're, you know, they call it the happiest place on earth, and I think for autism it really is, because, you know, there's that alleged pass that we never talk about because it's top secret and we would never even allude to it, but allegedly, if you go to Main Street there and tell them that your child has difficulties and you're specific about the kinds of difficulties that they have in line, there is an alleged pass that's wonderful. That makes the whole experience a really lovely, lovely thing. I encourage you to go get the alleged pass that I did not mention here. You did not hear it from me. All right. Okay. Another person says, I would love to go to Israel to see my family there. Another person who says, back home to St. Croix. Another who says, the Bahamas. I've always wanted to go there. Anywhere that is bright blue ocean is the place for me. Another person who says, I wish I had the money to take my kids to Disney World. Beach vacation with my hubby and two sons. Another person says, would love to take the girls to Montana d'Oro. Used to go there once a year when I had a car. Best camp spot so far. And another who says, my son wants to go to the Nick Suites in Orlando, which I'm guessing is the Nickelodeon Suites, and this is something I don't know about. But he says he loves it there. We just can't afford it right now. He's so happy they're getting slimed, which is why I think it's the Nickelodeon Studios. I'll have to look into that, because a place where your child can get slimed, I mean, what's better than that? And this is why I think it's Nickelodeon, because once you can slime somebody, that's very much, when years ago, I don't know if they still do it, but Nickelodeon used to do a tour where you could, in a given city, when I did not have a child, you could go and they would have a show, and they would take audience members and they would slime you, and it was all these things. And actually, one of the guys I went to college with was the head slime maker, which is why I knew about it. And at the time, I didn't have a child, and he would say, you know, let us know when we're in town, and, you know, we'll get you down, get you slimed. And of course, as a single person with no children, this did not appeal to me in any way, shape, or form. Now, my child would love to be slimed. I love this one. Somebody else who said, inside my head, son, just to see how he sees the world. And, you know, I mentioned, this goes hand in hand, that I have the same thing, that I want to know how my son thinks and how he sees. And, you know, I had read some Temple Grandin and saw the movie, and the whole idea of seeing things in pictures, that's how I am. I see everything visually. And I know for my son, it's different. He's conceptual, and I'm always asking him, what do you see in your head? And that's a strange concept, him see in my head. What do you mean? I can't see inside my head. My head's not open, right? So just the idea of visualization and always trying to get the right words to say to him to know how he visualizes things. And I can never solve this puzzle, right? So there we are on Mother's Day, and he's serving me breakfast in bed. We're all laying there on top of the bed Mother's Day morning, and he'd given me all these great things, which I talked about before. And but at a certain point, we're sitting there, and my husband, grabs his phone, and he says to me, "Oh, well, here's what we really got you." And he hands me his phone, and on it is a picture of a man who's standing there holding what looks like a bouquet, but on closer inspection, it's a bunch of kittens. And a big bunch of kittens. And it says, "Florist shop was closed. Hope you like cats." And you can't see the guy's face. You just see this, armload of kittens arranged in a way that they look a little like if you hadn't looked up close, like flowers. And we laughed and laughed and laughed and said how funny that is. And I said to my son, "Look at that. It's a big bunch of cats." And so we looked at it for just a second, and my husband took the phone back. And so we were looking at something else, and then they gave me a present, and I opened it, and I was like, "Oh, this is wonderful." And my son says, "Well, do you like that better than getting 12 kittens?" And I said, "Yeah, why 12? Why are you saying 12? And he goes, "Because that's how many kittens there were in the picture." And these kittens were all arranged in like a bundle, And I said, "Were there really 12? And I said, "Did you count them? You couldn't possibly have counted them in that amount of time." And he goes, "No, but I went back and counted them afterward." And this is like 2 seconds later, and I said, "What do you mean you went back and counted them afterwards?" And he said, "Well, I can still see the picture." So I got really excited, and I said, "Give me the phone. I need to look at the picture again, because I need to count and see if there's really 12 there." And of course there were 12. It was supposed to be a bouquet, but it wasn't that my son had thought of it in those terms. It was, and I said, "How did you know there were 12? And he said, "Because I can look at the picture after I've seen the picture." I said, "But the picture's not here." And he said, "No, but I can still see the picture." And I said, "That's exactly what I'm always talking about. You're seeing it in your mind." And he goes, "It's not in my mind. I can see it though." And I said, "But your eyes are open and you really can't see it. The place that you're seeing it is in your mind's eye." I've always been trying to give him that concept, and we've never, and he's like, oh, that place that you're talking about, that's where you're always wanting me to picture things? And I said, "Yes, on that place." And so we were talking about it, and I said, "So you could see the picture and you could go around and count them?" And he goes, "Yeah, but I don't just see the picture. I can move the kittens." And he said, "And I move them so that they line up so that I can count them." And I went, "Oh, this is so exciting. That's how you see things?" He goes, "Yeah, I can move things around in the picture," which I've always suspected, because he can see the back of a picture too. Like he can move things around and see. And he goes, "Yeah, what I do," he said, I picture the picture, and he goes, "and I can take the cats," and he goes, "and I line them up." And I got so excited. He said, why does this make you so happy that I'm telling you?" I said, "Because this is exactly what I wanted to know forever, is how you think and how you see things." And he goes, "Oh, okay, I can tell you all the time now." He just didn't understand the question. And I was so excited, because I do think there is a little bit of photographic memory in there. I have a little bit of photographic memory, but mine is like with no glasses. So if you ask me a conversation, I have no ability to remember things that are said to me unless I can picture where we were standing. And that's literally what I have to do, is say, "Okay, we were standing here, and I know you said this because we were standing here and you were wearing a purple shirt." And then I can remember whole conversations pretty much verbatim. But and I'm fairly quick study memorizing things, but it's not perfect photographic at all. But so I'm excited to know that my son, has some ability there, but that more importantly, that he takes things out of the picture and lines them up. Exciting to know how they think, right? And that's the point we're at, where we can have those kinds of conversations. Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a break, and we're going to come back and talk about finding replacement behavior for challenging behavior. In particular, we're going to talk about hand flapping. So stick with us. Back in just a few minutes.
ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, was founded in 2004 by several passionate parents who believe that access to early, effective treatment is vital for individuals with autism. Together with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pache, the world's leading provider of therapy for autism, this group created ACT Today to do just as the name implies, take action immediately to treat autism spectrum disorders.
A lot of families and parents and even physicians
don't yet accept the fact that we are recovering children with autism.
In 2006, inspired by her struggle to get treatment for her young son Wyatt, television producer and author Nancy Alspaugh Jackson and her husband Reed hosted a backyard benefit for the foundation called Denim and Diamonds for Autism. Tens of thousands of dollars were raised, and in 2008, Alspaugh Jackson took the helm of ACT Today as executive director.
This country has to come together to save a generation of children.
With a dedicated board of directors, a small but committed staff called the A-Team, as in autism, ACT Today is making a huge difference in the lives of children across the country. Grants that fund programs for behavior therapy, special needs schools, and summer camps. Medical needs like diagnostic tests and special diets. Basic safety equipment such as helmets for children who repetitively bang their heads, and fencing for those who wander. Assisted technologies and assistance dogs.
Hi, my name is Max, and I love my iPad too. It's so great. I can take photos.
In 2010, ACT for Military Families became the first national campaign to benefit military children with autism.
I'm Joe Montaigne. As a father of a daughter with autism, I know the challenges that brings.
ACT Today continues to educate and raise national awareness on the need for early and intensive intervention for an epidemic that affects at least 1 in 110 children.
I called on November 1st. And I'm like, how am I going to get notified? How are you going to let me know? And they ended up looking and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above.
ACT Today, fulfilling its mission of helping families with autism, one child at a time.
Welcome back to Autism Live, and I promised that we would give you a tip about challenging behavior and giving a replacement behavior for challenging behavior. In particular, the example that I want to use today is hand flapping. Our kids will sometimes engage in those repetitive and restrictive behaviors that are part of the diagnosis, right? Whether it's toe walking or lining things up or hand flapping. And keep in mind that different kids, we're always looking for what the function of the behavior is, right? That's really going to help us to be able to come up with an efficient and effective way to change the behavior and maybe increase in some cases and decrease and eliminate in other cases. So hand flapping for different kids can have different functions. I mean, a lot of times I think we assume that it just feels good, right? But there are some kids who will hand flap for attention, and there are some kids who hand flap to get out of doing something, because if you're asking them to do something with their hands and they're flapping their hands, then there's no way they can do it, right? A lot of kids are going to hand flap in order to soothe themselves in some way, whether it's stimulatory or calm down, but it feels good. And I have to be honest with you that I've shared on the show before that after my son had been diagnosed with autism, about a year later, I started having panic attacks. Between everything else that was happening, I was starting to have panic attacks. And I remember having talked to one person about autism and saying, why does he do that? Because my son very much hand flapped. And their initial response, because sometimes they want to give an easy answer to a parent, is, it feels good. It helps him if he's feeling anxious, which isn't always the case, by the way. But I remember having a panic attack and feeling all this, going on inside and going, oh, it didn't feel good. I'm thinking, I got to find a way to feel better, calm down. And I thought, I'm going to try it and see. And you know what? I got to be honest with you, it calmed me down. So I don't know whether that's why my child was hand flapping in every instance, and I certainly don't know if that's why your child is hand flapping, but I can tell you that there's a reason why your child is hand flapping. And when we do an FBA and figure out what is the function of this behavior, then we're able to have the potential to change the behavior. So let's assume for a second, because it's probably the most likely suspect, that it's to soothe, right? But for each child, it's going to be something slightly different. So we want to look at putting in a replacement behavior. Of course, we want to do antecedent modification and figure out when does the hand flapping occur. So what is it that's making the child, if it's that the child is doing it to soothe themselves from feeling anxious, what's making them anxious? What's the antecedent? What's happening right before that's making the child anxious? Because in that scenario, in the three-term contingent, this event happens, the child gets anxious, so the child engages in the behavior, and the consequence is that they feel better, right? So we want to change, if it's something that doesn't need to happen and it's making them anxious, then we're going to potentially say we're not engaging in whatever this thing is. Maybe it's a play date with Robert down the street makes them anxious, and we identify that that's what it is. So maybe we're not going to have a play date with Robert for a little while. Not forever, but for a little while. Why do we need to put them through that stress? But if it's something that, it's an event that has to happen every day, that we really can't change the event, maybe it's eating breakfast, sitting down at the table to eat breakfast makes them feel anxious, then we need to work to make breakfast not anxious making, make it more reinforcing to sit and have breakfast. But we also want to put in a replacement behavior for something for them to do that's more appropriate, that soothes them instead of the hand flapping. So it could be, and figuring out with each individual child, but if we know that the goal is to have it be to soothe, let's find something that's easier to do. For some kids, it can be taking their thumb and massaging the middle of their hand. For little kids, holding onto their toes is something that, you'll see kids grab their toes all the time. It's something that's soothing, and it's more appropriate for a 3-year-old to do that than to flap their hands, because the other 3-year-olds don't think anything of it. But a 3-year-old who's doing this is going to have a harder time making friends, right? Or a 3-year-old or an 8-year-old who's massaging their hand is more socially acceptable than this, right? So we want to find, and there are all kinds of different things that a child can do. What we discovered with my son, and I mentioned this the other day, that he liked to be burritoed. We saw Jack Riley this week, and they were making a pillow sandwich with him. We see that Temple Grandin had the cow squisher that she would do. Some kids need that sensory, the squeeze, the squish. And my son learned how to ask, can you squish me, when he needed it. It would be amazing, and any given day he'd walk up and say, can you squish me, which was okay. And then he went to school and he would say to his one-on-one aide, can you squish me? And he'd say to his teacher, can you squish my head? And she would squish his head for him a little bit. It just felt good for him when he was feeling that anxiety. Well, now he's in 3rd grade, right? Not so appropriate to go up to the teacher and say, can you squish me? Or say to a friend, can you squish my head? And as we get older, he's going to say that to the wrong person, right? And we're going to have a bad outcome. So we started last summer working on him applying pressure to his elbows, that he could, I said to him, you can't be asking for hugs anymore, but you can give yourself a hug. And that it's this thing of applying pressure and pushing in on his elbows, or pushing in on his shoulders, which we see people do in office buildings, right? There's the guy who works 3 cubicles down from you, that while he's sitting and thinking, he's doing this to himself, right? It serves the same purpose as this. So we have to teach our children these replacement behaviors. So if it happens around breakfast and we see, okay, well, breakfast is anxious making, and so we're going to make breakfast less anxious making, but we're also going to teach the child to be doing something, manipulating themselves in some way that's more socially acceptable. The key is the replacement behavior. Okay, we got to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to do the myth of the day, and then after that, we're going to be welcoming Greg from the Autspot into the studio with us to talk about what they do at the Autspot. Stick with us.
Here I stand, a man, someone who has overcome struggles, someone who has endured perceptions of what others thought of him, thinking he was stupid because he was autistic, or simply believing him to be nothing because he was different to them in their minds. But I stood my ground. I just wanted to say to the organization in general, alongside helping me to improve communicatively and socially, the other greatest gifts you gave me were the value of discipline and a good work ethic. To quote Anthony Kiedis, "To celebrate you is greater now that I can." You helped me to realize that the harder you work, the likelier you are to achieve success. Having had to work very, very hard to recover from autism, this discipline has continued to serve me well. I also realized that you taught me a lot about and instilled within me a quality of having compassion and sympathy for other people. That you will be concerned more with the needs and wishes of others than with your own is something that I awe and I constantly strive to be. And in closing, the only way I can sum up CARD, all of you, is love. Everything you do to help families in need, you do out of the sheer love of wanting to make a positive difference in people's lives. And as I stand here before you as a mature adult, I have to say that I'm extremely grateful for your unwavering loving commitments to helping others and me recover from potential life roadblocks and become active and contributing members of society. While I can't overcome obstacles without a will, I cannot have a will without the love of those supporting me. And without love, I am nothing. Thanks again so very much for your love, everything that you've done and continue to do. Please give my best wishes to your families, everybody else with CARD who isn't here, and especially all of your clients and their kids. I'm confident that they too will be able to overcome, and I know that they'll be successful in what they do as long as they continue to put their minds, hearts, passions, and best efforts into it. Enough said.
Welcome back to Autism Live. It's time for the myth of the day. And Emily had made a new slide for the myth of the day, and she said that it was in honor of Jem, my son, and I see now that it's space themed. My son loves space and does not want to go out into space. He's very clear about that. He tells people he wants to be a rocket engineer, has been saying that ever since he could say his first sentence. And then people say to him, "Oh, you want to be an astronaut?" And he says, "No, I don't want to go into space. I want to make the rocket so someone else can go into space." And more particularly, I think he wants to send things into space. We're very close to the Jet Propulsion Lab here in California, where they make the Mars rover and those kinds of things. Very exciting place to visit. Okay, so in any case, the myth of the day today, thank you, Emily, it's gorgeous, and Jem will love it. The myth of the day today is one that's really been kicking my keister and making me miserable. That, you know, they came out with this new study a couple of months ago that said basically what they had done is taken information from another study they had done, a survey that they had allowed parents to answer questions. And one of the early questions in the survey was did your child ever have an autism diagnosis? And people said yes, because that was the group that they were surveying. And then later on in the survey, it said, does your child currently have an autism spectrum diagnosis? And about, 45% of the people in the survey said no. And so they took this information and they used it for, whatever the original study was. And then another study came along and said, we want to, take some of this information and use it. And they published a study based on this and talked about the fact that a large portion of people were saying that at some point their child had an autism diagnosis and that later on that some of them did not. And they were publishing this study, and a bunch of news media took this thing and said, oh, well, clearly, kids are outgrowing autism, and put forth this idea that you can outgrow autism and that a lot of kids are just outgrowing autism. And it makes me so furious that it makes me want to run around the room screaming with my hair lit on fire, because it's such a disservice to our children. And I know I recently did a newspaper article in which I was talking about this, and there was a slight it wasn't a misquote in terms of what I said, but it missed the things that were around it, because the reporter said, does anybody ever outgrow autism? And I said, I have never in my life met a single child who outgrew autism who did not have some kind of ABA therapy and other things going on in their home where their parents and that child didn't work really hard. I have never heard of that, ever. So, perhaps there are things, I know thousands upon thousands of autism parents. Maybe I have just missed the boat entirely, and there are a group of hidden children somewhere, but I am not aware of any child who has ever outgrown autism. I am aware of children who get to the point where they no longer qualify for their autism diagnosis, and in fact, science has shown us that about 47% of kids who start ABA therapy at the proper age, get the right amount of quality ABA therapy, will reach the point where they've lost their diagnosis, no longer qualify for it. But that comes with a great deal of work. That doesn't happen overnight, and I don't think that any parent who has been through that kind of intervention would be okay with saying that the child outgrew it. That's like saying you outgrew college and managed to get a diploma, but you weren't doing any work. You just outgrew it. That doesn't happen. That's a fairy tale. But what's true is that our kids can make real progress. It's real work and it's expensive. It's real worth it. But there is no such thing that I am aware of. And if you know of somebody who just outgrew autism, tell me, because I know you don't. Right? And what a disservice to our children and to our families when we've worked and worked and worked to be able to provide for our children these therapies, and they have worked. How hard do our kids work to be able to make the progress that they make? Terrible disservice to them to say that they outgrew it. Inappropriate. No outgrowing autism, but we can make real progress when we put our minds to it, our heart and our minds to it. So there's our myth of the day. We're going to take a break. I believe, is Greg with us yet? Okay, so we're going to take a break, and when we come back from the break, we are going to have Greg from the Hotspot with us. You won't want to miss that. Stick with us.
My name is Monique Erickson. I'm a senior supervisor here at CARD in the training department.
What should a parent do to set up a room so that it's really friendly for learning?
Well, when you're starting to set up teaching sessions in your home, what you want to do is kind of decide where you're going to do this. And there's a few options. It's not set in stone one way or the other. What you want to think about is where is therapy going to be most effective for this child. A lot of families will designate an area in the child's room, or if they are fortunate enough to have extra space, they might designate a room where therapy might happen. If it's appropriate, some families will just kind of put a learning center or area in a part of their home. And it really just kind of depends on how and where your child is in the program about being able to inhibit certain distractions and so forth. So early on in the program, I find that it's probably most useful to have an area in their room or somewhere where you can really get away from a lot of distractions. So maybe in their room, and to start, that's definitely not where you want to stay. You want the child to be able to generalize their skills around the house and with everybody. But to start, it might be very helpful to have it in an area where you can minimize visual distractions. You don't have too much on the wall. Making sure you're not. There's a lot of things when you look at the home that when you take it from a child's perspective, or especially a child with autism, there's lots of distractions you don't think about. Looking for patterns. A lot of our kids get very distracted by the windows, the blinds, the light coming through at that either horizontal or vertical pattern can be very distracting. So making sure you're not facing their table directly towards the window might be something you have to take into consideration. Or the ceiling fan, is that going to just be too distracting in there, or something of that nature. I've had some families successfully put a work center in the family room that's adjacent to another part of the home, and we just had to be very careful as far as distractions. If that was too distracting, we did have an option to pull them back into a different room where that wasn't going to be the case.
Are there any specific types of furniture that they should have in the room?
There's definitely going to be some things that you for sure need. You're going to need somewhere for that child to sit and work. And depending on their age and where you're starting, that could be one of those little tyke tables with the little chairs. I've sat in those chairs for many years, so those are useful. A lot of families use those For the bigger children, you're just going to have to find something that's appropriate to their size and height so that they're comfortable. So you definitely want some kind of workspace, especially if you're working on motor skills or so forth. A lot of things that we're working on, it's not appropriate to do on the floor. You don't want to be working on writing or coloring on the floor. They're supposed to be at a table, so just to promote the right holding of the utensil and things like that. So you want a workspace, but you also want some play area. We're working on hopefully play skills and a lot of things like that, and we definitely don't want them sitting at the table for all of their sessions. So you want some play areas. I think some things that I have found helpful, especially for working on beginning level programming, where we're really trying to get these kiddos to ask us for things and what we call manding, asking for things that they want. Maybe putting some shelves or something where those really highly desired things are in sight but just out of reach to help promote those opportunities for them to ask us for them. So that might be a really great way of doing that. You're definitely going to want some toys, but it really is going to depend on the toys are going to be dependent on the child. Where are their play skills? Can they already do puzzles and a lot of that independent beginning play that has a definite beginning and end? Or are they going into more functional pretend play using cars and little people and so forth? So wherever their play skills are, you're going to want to find some objects or toys to facilitate that. Some other things that you want to think about is you're going to have a lot of materials or supplies that you're using for these lessons, and how much you have really will depend on what you're working on, but there are some definites. You're going to want some pens. You're going to have a program book that you will need to help guide your lessons each day, so you know what you're doing. Where is that child at in his lessons? You probably need lots of whiteout and erasers and such. So what we find is it's very helpful to have a designated area in the room, making sure that is out of the reach of the child so that they're not taking their own data on the side, and making sure we can put that up high and you can get to it as quickly when needed. When you start, you know where to get it. Everything's there. If you need supplies, you know where to get it really quickly, and it's all up there. And as far as programming wise too, you might have a bunch of picture cards or something like that that you're using for certain programs. It really depends on what you find is best to organize yourself. Some people like to keep it within the book in that program area. For example, if you're working on teaching verbs or actions, you might have some action picture cards and you could choose to put them in that section in the book so you know where to find them. Or you might have some kind of shoebox type thing that organizes them by area, that you can organize your materials that way, and then keeping them out of reach of the child within the area that you can get to pretty quickly.
And what about for a teacher? How can a teacher set up an area in the room that's really conducive to this kind of learning?
I think for teachers, some of the things are going to be similar. You want to minimize distractions. What you're looking at. Sometimes you go into a classroom and you just see there's things, streamers flying, and everything's around the room, and you got to minimize that because it's going to be visually distracting and hard for them to concentrate. I had a little guy who was very sensitive to sound, and he happened to be sitting right under a vent, an AC vent, and he could not attend for anything. It must have sounded like Darth Vader was coming through. That's all he could hear, and we once we realized what that was, what was distracting him, we moved him and he was much better. So you have to really take in those considerations. What's going on in the environment? Is there any distractions that will get in the way of effective learning in this environment? So that's where I would start. Another thing we want to consider when for the teacher looking at the classroom is we want to make sure there's a designated area within that classroom that the child can be pulled over and to that workstation and be able to work without all the distractions of the classroom. So something where they've designated a special area that maybe it may have barriers or something in there to help minimize the distractions of the classroom, but that they have that opportunity to go and work one-on-one on these skill targets.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California, and our special guest in the studio. So thrilled to have you here today. This is Greg Koltsov. Am I saying it right?
Perfect.
I said earlier I didn't want to slaughter it, so I didn't want to. No. Is it a good Russian name?
It's a strong Russian name.
There you go. Okay. We don't want to tick off a strong Russian name. So, but anyway, you are the co-founder of the lovely Autspot.
Yeah.
And I've been saying all morning long and all week long, I kind of think of you guys as the Facebook of autism.
Yeah.
Is that pretty accurate?
That's That's how we're usually described. So
Okay, all right. I must have heard it from somebody then. But for anybody who doesn't get what that means quite, what does the Hotspot do?
Pretty much a couple of years ago, my college roommate and I, a little over 2 years ago, we created an autism online community, and it was designed for parents who have kids with autism to kind of unite and talk to one another. Mm-hmm. So a huge online support group was the main goal out of it. 2.5 years later, we got professionals, teachers, ABA therapists, other organizations on, so it kind of, we went over the expectations just a little bit.
You evolved.
Yeah, but I mean, the main concern was always for parents to kind of help, one another out, and the newly diagnosed parents who are just getting the diagnosis right now would unite with the parents who've, been on the spectrum for a while and, got the diagnosis maybe years ago.
Yeah.
So that's the main goal.
Wonderful. And so how do two college guys sitting around in a dorm room, how do you go, oh, let's do this? Where did this come from?
Well, we graduated with, believe it or not, business economics degrees, and we didn't really enjoy what we were doing. And Deli, who is the co-founder, his cousin was diagnosed with autism. Mm-hmm. And being close to their family, that's my only involvement with autism. I don't have any personal ties with it. I'm not going to be here and tell you that, I have family members. I've never, I've heard of it, of course, but you have to realize a few years back, even, 5-6 years ago, we didn't hear much about it.
Right. Right. You were just going to college, minding your own business, and you've got this roommate, and he's got is a cousin or nephew?
It's his cousin. First cousin.
And so who comes up with the idea first? You're sitting around and saying, or does he say, this is what my aunt needs? How does that happen?
We were talking just about kind of different things. We wanted to get involved more with like nonprofits and start helping out, causes and stuff like that. And we were just kind of talking, and he was like, my aunt, who I already knew, she has Matthew, who was his cousin, and he was at that time 18 years old, and he was diagnosed when he was 5.
Wow.
So they kind of know everything, A to Z, Z to A, just kind of, where to go, what to do. And her biggest issue was that she wanted everything she's experienced and all the bad things she went through, positive things, the positive resources, the negative resource, money spent here, money spent there, what are the wisest decisions, what are the best things. Her goal was to kind of educate parents who just got the diagnosis. So her son being 18, she's experienced so many things.
Yeah.
So she kind of was like, I wish there was a community where parents such as myself who, stay-at-home moms who've been on the spectrum for a while could unite with parents who are completely clueless.
Yeah.
Who are scared, who don't know where to go, what to do, and help, one another out. And I mean, I kind of learned this along this, autism journey. I don't think anybody knows a child better than the actual parent.
Yeah.
You could go to the doctors, you can go to the physicians, but at the end of the day, the parent is the one who spends the most time with the child, knows what's going on and kind of sees everything firsthand. Yeah. So our goal was to create this community where, parents such as Deli's aunt could unite with parents who just received the diagnosis and go from there.
Yeah.
And, we have blogs where a parent could post something like, what's the best food to eat? Our child is not reacting well,
Right.
Bathroom issues, at school kind of not, stable. And we have blogs, and parents just comment underneath, I have a child who does this, or I had a child who did this, or I suggest taking this. At the end of the day, it's parents. They're not doctors. They're not telling you what to do. It's just suggestions.
Right.
So that's why I think it works so well, because, I mean, every child is different.
Yeah.
And it could work for one kid, and it can't work, unfortunately, for another. But, you have parents there, and you have that support. So that's kind of the main goal, for parents to be able to just help each other out.
Exactly. I think it's a wonderful model, because we talk about it all the time here on this show, and I talk about it on the radio show, which I've had you on before, that you start out and you feel like you're terribly alone as a parent.
Yeah.
And then as you go on the journey, you discover, oh, for heaven's sake, I'm not alone, and you get to the point where you feel like you need to do something, so you reach back to help as many people as you can. And people have found ways, you know, everybody finds their own way, but I find it so fascinating that, you know, two guys who really don't, and especially for you, because this is not your direct family, but it's turned into a passion for you, has it not?
Exactly. And I mean, I think, I mean, we see it on CNN.com now. It wasn't like this before. We didn't know it's all over the place. You know, professional sports are getting involved, entertainment. It definitely wasn't like this before, you know, even when we first got involved 3 years ago. So it's definitely something that's grown, I think, and more people are aware. Yeah. And that's our goal as well. Awareness, I think, is key. I know it's really cliche to say about anything, cancer, AIDS, autism, but at the end of the day, I think awareness is key. The more people that know about it, I think the better. Just the general populace. It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, scientists who are trying to find a cure. I think the more people that know about autism, about anything, the likelier chance we have, you know, of kind of progress. You know, progress. I think most importantly, there's no cure. Everyone knows that, but there are different things out there, different medications, different, you know, ABA therapies, all of that stuff. So, you know, different schools, and I think my personal goal is to definitely, you know, make more people aware. Yeah, so, absolutely. You know, you and I just ran into each other at the walk for autism, and you definitely have people who support the cause, who don't support the cause, but you know, when you have over 20,000 people, it can never be a negative thing, you know? So. And you guys, there are so many different things that you guys do, but you go to events. Yeah. You're a presence at events, and at the walk in particular, you guys give away goldfish. Yeah, what we do is we give away goldfish. We always get goldfish donated for us for events. So it's funny because people are like, what's your website, goldfish.org or something, you know, so it's, we're not affiliated with anything goldfish online, but it's, we give kids goldfish, they love them, and we have kids come back the following year and their parents are like, look at, you know, we still have our goldfish. It's a matter of feeding them, and it's kind of a lot
Some of the goldfish make it, some of them don't. Exactly. But it's one of those things. It's a great lesson in life, and the kids find it very reinforcing. And most of these kids are, you know, 4 or 5 years old, so it's their first pet, and they get really tied and emotionally, but it's fun, you know. At the end of the day, it works. So I think we've gotten 3 different goldfish from you, and there's the saga of the goldfish in our house, because that's the big thing. We go to the walk, and I'm excited about a certain set of things. My husband's excited about other things, and Jem is excited to visit your booth to get the goldfish. And we have to time it just so in the day so that the goldfish isn't traumatized, but we get there before you're out of goldfish. It's a big thing, you guys. And the first year, the goldfish, we had it for like 2 weeks, and we had a goldfish bowl, first pet, and he leapt out, and we found him on the kitchen counter. It was trauma. So we got a fish tank. The second year, we still have this fish, and I don't think it's a goldfish. I think it's a carp. It's huge. Yeah, I don't even know what gets donated sometimes. It's huge, huge fish. And this last year, the fish made it about a week and a half, and then it gave up the ghost. It's, you know, it happens. But very reinforcing. Taught my son lots of life lessons, and it's a part of our everyday that the other fish, whose name is Scout, you know, Scout has to be fed and taken care of, and it's a very big deal. In any case, there are so many other things that the Hotspot does besides the giving away the goldfish, but it's no small thing. I have to be honest with you. We're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk to Greg about how the Hotspot can affect what you're doing today, and how it can help and support you, and how you do things. There's so many different ways that the Hotspot can help you. So stick with us to hear more from Greg from the Hotspot. Welcome. We're here with Cecilia Knight. She is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, so it's a rare treat to have her here. And right now I want to talk about self-stimulatory behavior. Well, I guess textbook, we're looking at any ritualistic or stereotypical behavior
that a child engages in repetitively. The thought is the more appropriate replacement behaviors that we teach, the more those items become more reinforcing and give the child access to whether it's visual stimulation or auditory stimulation or tactile stimulation. So those now more appropriate activities would be more reinforcing. So it's important to teach something that competes and that is more fun than engaging in the self-stimulatory behavior. All self-stimulatory behavior is automatically reinforced, meaning the behavior itself feels good for whatever reason. I have no visual stimulation, so I flap my hand in front of my eye and now I have visual stimulation. So you're looking for a replacement that matches. I had a little girl one time who was not talking but was singing, and it was very repetitive and the same song over and over. Music became a big interest. So when we gave her a voice to have a conversation, the vocal stereotypy decreased dramatically.
You have to tell me. Oh, you want lip gloss too?
Do you find that sometimes parents are hesitant or resistant to replacing a self-stimulatory behavior?
Yes. It's very difficult to always be looking out for that self-stimulatory behavior. I do think you have to help a parent understand that those things like riding the scooter will eventually replace the self-stimulatory behavior.
A lot of us have been there. That's not where we want to be. It just felt like, wow, I'm going to take away the thing that makes him feel okay, and he's working so hard and doing this.
But also know that that's the point of intervention, is not to take away all the things that are reinforcing to the child, but to give them other options that are more appropriate. It's difficult to engage with your child many times in a self-stimulatory behavior because there's a pattern or routine, and it's hard to engage with them. So trying to bring them into activities that are reinforcing with others.
Where did they go? Oh, nice job. He needs a nose too. Where does his nose go? What else? What else does he need? This is my potato.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here right now with our special guest, Greg Koltsov. Did I get it right again?
Yeah, two for two.
Oh my goodness. From the Autspot, and he's talking to us today about what the Autspot does and how it affects us and how it's a great resource for all of us to be using. So Greg, talk to us about the nuts and bolts of your site. How does somebody get there, first of all?
Well, first they go type in the URL. We'll start with the basics. www.theautspot.com. TheAutspot.com.
So important to put the in there. I always put Autspot.com.
You could put Autspot, and now it transfers
goes there now?
over.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, great.
It doesn't matter though. It works, and you log in. You create a profile, so very similar to Facebook, and then we have different sections. So I mentioned earlier, you have the blog section. That's usually for parents or specialists or whatever, if they have any specific questions or concerns or potty training, dieting, whatever, and they usually post something, and you're going to get some kind of response. Could be positive. They're all positive, but it could be helpful. It could be not helpful. But
you'll get response.
You'll get response. You'll get advice. You could take it, or you could just read it. Yeah. That's the whole point of it. You don't have to take anyone's advice. You don't have to listen to anybody. But at the same time, you're going to get that feedback. You're going to get that support. So depending on your situation, you never know. It's a community of over 25,000 people, so
it's amazing.
Most likely someone has dealt with your situation or something similar, or someone could suggest what they would recommend or what someone else has told them. So it's you have that blog section, then you have a forum section, which is usually for articles or news or scientific research or what's in the media today. That's just kind of like the hub of what's going on in the world of autism today. From statistics to recent news to political plans going forward.
But you can comment on it too.
You could comment, you could post. It's all open.
Yeah.
It's all available.
Because you know things happen in the news, and from time to time you read something like when this whole Stuart Chaffetz thing happened, and I know I have a community of people here, and people were coming in and saying, "Did you see this? Did you see this?" And I was like, "Yeah," and it's wonderful. But I wanted to go and talk about it with autism parents, you know, and sometimes you just want to be able to say to a group of people, "Did this not tick you off? Did this not upset you?" And be able to talk about it in a safe environment with people who understand what it is you're reacting to. And you can do that on the Hotspot.
Exactly. And the thing is, you never know what's going on in this world. You know, you have, like I said earlier, you have your CNN articles, you have your Fox News articles, but there's a lot of different websites and a lot of different things going on. Every day there's something new with autism. So that's what the forums section, we created that, you know, for that particular purpose. I think one of the most important sections is, it's definitely underrated, and that's the inspirational section in our site. And that was specifically influenced from Deli's cousin, Matthew, who he made the varsity team in high school. He's on the spectrum. He made the, you know, he was always passionate about running, track and field. He made the team, and that was kind of a big deal for him, a big deal for the family, you know, the parents, the brothers, the sisters. So when something good happens, we want parents to share that, because it, you know, it gives hope to other parents. And we have the most amazing stories. We had a mother post a YouTube video of her son on America's Got Talent, who has an amazing voice. We had another parent, you know, father post how great of an artist his son is, and truly has art exhibits, you know, all over the Midwest. It's amazing to see how many inspirational posts get posted. You know, we have a girl who I think turned 21, and she's a Marine. You know, they just moved out to San Diego. There's just there's amazing stories. They're all very, very different, but most importantly, all of these kids are on the spectrum and are succeeding and excelling in life. And I think little things like that give parents who just get the diagnosis hope. When you could learn that, you know, there's a child who has a girlfriend, you know, who is in college, who made an athletic team, or who's in the Army or the Marines or whatever it is. When you hear those little things, you know, it gives parents hope. It gives them motivation that, you know, my son, my daughter, they could be similar to typical kids. You know, we just have to work hard and
have a full life.
And a lot of these, you know, a lot of these parents message these other parents who post privately. Sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't. But, you know, most of them are very open, telling you what they did, what was different. And you know, what a lot of people are realizing is today we have many more resources than we did back then. So I think that's definitely a positive going forward.
What a wonderful place to be able to go on a regular basis, so that if you have something to share that's inspirational, that you know exactly where you can put it, and it's going to be so well received and potentially help somebody else. But also when you're having one of those days that as parents we all have, where it just feels like it's all swimming around the toilet, and we're not talking about a goldfish, you know, and you need something to pick you up and lift you up, to remind you that it's not all what's happening right now. To be able to go there and know I'm not going to have to hunt around on the internet to find something that's going to uplift me, that I can go to the Hotspot and go to inspiration and do that.
Exactly.
And you also have teenagers that are talking to each other on the spectrum on your site, yes?
Yeah, we have. It's, like I said, originally it was designed for parents. And
but the community told you what they needed.
As basically the community progressed, we have, you know, not many, but definitely a good amount of, you know, young adults on the spectrum who sign on and they post, you know, this is what I went through as a child. This is what we like. This is what we don't like. You know, you have kids posting poems. You have kids posting, you know, some of their artwork, links to their websites. We were kind of surprised by that, but it's definitely something that we want to, you know, make efforts taking to, you know, a different level. I mean, the majority obviously are parents, and that was our primary goal. But now that you're getting young adults with autism who have made friends in the community already, and it doesn't matter if you're in California or if you're in Michigan. Internet's an internet, you know.
So. Well, that brings me to, you know, your viewers are from all over, yes? International.
We have we have a resource section where a parent could input their zip code, and within that mile radius, depending on what they want, if it's therapists, if it's after-school programs, sports camps, the local dentist, it doesn't matter, those resources would pop up. And what we did was we made that completely open, completely free, and you know, it gets posted on a daily basis. Professionals post their resources. We screen them, of course, to make sure, you know, they're legitimate, they have addresses and stuff like that, and that they help the autism community. But with that, our goal is, you know, to make it a global community where if you're looking for something, if it's, you know, if Google's too complex, if there's if you're already in the community, you just input your zip code and all of the autism resources within your mile radius shows up.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Does it also, I can't remember, if you're looking for people, other parents to connect with in your zip code, does it also have a way that you can figure that out as well?
Yeah, you could search, you know, you could search Los Angeles, you could search, you know, New York City. It isn't, it definitely, you could just,
but for other users.
Exactly. Other users can minimize the search options and filter the whatever way.
Because we had a question earlier from a parent who had written in and said, you know, I'm interested in starting ABA. My son's 8, and I'm in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Like, you know, what kinds of things do I need to do? And I always say to people, you got to have 2 support groups. You got to have a local one and a more global one. And then in a lot of ways, the Hotspot can be both of those for you.
And what we did was we also, we realized that it's going to be difficult to convince parents to go from Facebook to the Hotspot. So when we created our fan page, you know, we have local contests on our Facebook fan page. We have, we basically, you know, within the last year and a half, we're able to get over 10,000 fans on the fan page alone. So what we're doing with that is, you know, we're posting articles every day. We're posting new autism research. So even if you don't go on the Hotspot as much as you want. I know people are on Facebook, like, you know, it's the Bible these days. So when they go onto Facebook and they go to our fan page, it's facebook.com/thehotspot. You know, you'll see, you know, we post as much as we could on the fan page with articles, research, various news articles and stuff like that. And, you know, you could post on the wall of Facebook and say, you know, I'm in Westchester, Pennsylvania. What's local? You never know. Out of however many people on Facebook, someone's going to respond to you. And we try our best to, you know, respond accordingly as well.
So when you go in to register, here's the big $64,000 question. And what is the cost to register?
It's absolutely free. We learned that awareness is key, and just helping other people is key, and to grow as fast as possible with as many people as possible. You know, something like this has to be free. We're never contemplating charging anybody. The first and primary goal is to help and you know, raise awareness.
But so how are you guys paying the bills? How does it work out in terms
we
of...
learned that, you know, there are ways to make money. Just to support the website and continue funding it. We launched a nonprofit foundation as well. With the nonprofit, our goal is to raise as many funds as possible, you know, for the website, as well as kids who come from lower income families who need, you know, IEP help, therapy, speech therapies. Like, we try our best to have galas, family picnics, you know, just to...
Events. You guys do a lot of events. In fact, I want to take a break and come back and talk about all the events that you guys do, because we've gone to some of your events and had a really good time. We went to a Clipper game because you guys had tickets that you gave, and it was great. My son had never been to a basketball game before and went with some of his buddies that also are on the spectrum, and it was a great, great evening. So anyway, we're going to talk about all that when we come back. Stick with us. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Mostly the behavior started at night, but it was invading the day, where he would just speak one syllable and babble and pace around.
When she was a year old, she lost speech. She did never seem to request me for anything, even for food. He told me over the phone that I should just put her in an institution. I was devastated. Webster Institution, a hospital. Yeah, isn't that nice?
He told me that it was possible or likely that Ruffin would never be employed, that he would never work productively, that he would not know that I loved him, nor would he love me, nor would he be likely to marry.
There's a 50% chance that he won't be able to talk at all, but if he does talk, he will only be able to, you know, make simple desire requests, I want, things like that. And probably by the time he was 10, he'd be in a home.
Doreen told me that he would recover, and Doreen told me that he would go to regular kindergarten.
I really have a very normal kid now, and lots of normal worries, but not extraordinary ones.
My name is Deli Popola, and I'm one of the creators of theautism.com. Theautism.com is an online support system for families and specialists who are affected by autism across the whole world. Share inspirational stories, find resources in their area. Hope you can join.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We were just enjoying watching the autism promo spot that we show on a daily basis, and that you didn't even know we were showing.
I had no idea we have commercials, yeah.
You do. You have a commercial, and we show it every day. So in any case, because we're big supporters of the Aut Spot, you know that.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about the different things that you guys do on your site, that there are so many different things when you go to the site, both on the Facebook page and on the actual site, that it's all free. All those resources are there for you. You can have your local support group and your more global support group there. But you guys also do events, and we were talking about that. Events that you attend, like the walk that you were at with the goldfish, but you guys also make it possible for our kids to go to different events. I was mentioning the Clippers tickets that you guys, how are you making that happen? And
we, you know, hard work, I guess, networking, and just the fact that I think, like you said, something like the Clippers, they reached out and they decided to, you know, sponsor our site. And I think, I mean, you see the faces of these kids when they attend these games, and something like the Staples Center and you know, a big arena with lights and music, and they're very supportive. They, whenever we do events with them, you know, we have a specific like GFCF section in the arena. You know, they have extra people in the aisles to help, you know, find the seats, and the seats are usually good.
Yeah, we had a box.
Yeah, so our main goal is to kind of let families experience stuff that they usually can't, either because of work or because, you know, it's difficult to get out of the house once in a while. But when when so many people are invited who are affiliated with autism, it kind of gives them more of a comfortable feeling. And you know, we try to help out as much as we can with parking and stuff like that, and you know, obviously the free tickets and with food. And you know, the Clippers thing is something we're, you know, very grateful for getting involved with, and we want to get affiliated with more. You know, we want to do some hockey events. We did a few soccer events with like Galaxy, and everyone's obsessed with David Beckham, of course. And then you know, we want to get affiliated with the Dodgers, the Angels. So our goal is to get as many sports as possible, and outside of sports, we do these family picnics where we have various contests for kids and parents, and we have auctions for therapies, speech therapies. We try to, you know, raise as much money as we can, of course, for, like I said, the lower income families. And we had a few galas for, you know, special families that we pick out, where we try to raise money for, you know, IEPs and whatever they're dealing with at school. So we're trying to do as much as we can, you know. The most important issue is to realize that all of this costs money. All of these therapies, all of, you know, this education, all of that stuff. So we do realize that, you know, families don't have that much money. And that kind of, that's our motivation. When we do these events, we try to reach out to the families that are lower income, that don't have the opportunities to get out or pay, you know, for resources that maybe other families could. So in terms of those kind of events and fundraising, that's what we try to do.
So let's talk a little bit about, for families that are watching and want to get involved. First thing they can do is log on and become a member, and they can start to participate in the way that helps them. Yeah,
you could do the fan page, like I said, the Facebook page, facebook.com/theautspot. You could email us, info@theautspot.com, and I mean, we get tons of emails. You know, we have college interns, high school interns that go to events with us, that help out, you know, that help us set up booths, that pass out brochures for us, bracelets, you know, all that stuff. You could definitely volunteer, you could definitely help out. It looks good on your resume, kids. So,
right. And there's I want to bring home the point that there are so many different things you can do. If you're a family just starting out and what you need is information, the best thing to do is go on and use the site and get the information. As you journey along and you know a little bit more, you can be reaching out and helping other people with the information that you have. When you get to a certain point, the thing that I was really noticing this year at the walk, and I think it's because it's where I'm at, is that you get to a certain point where your kid's doing so much better and they're older and you have more free time, and so you feel this need to help in some way that's a little bit bigger. And I was noticing at the walk, all these people that were advocates and getting all this stuff done, their kids were 8 years old and older. And I always like to remind you that if you're a young child and you're just starting out on autism, there's no expectation that you're supposed to go out and save the world, right? But you get a little bit further in and you feel the need to reach back and help people. So you can be volunteering if you work with a corporation and they want to sponsor an event or donate some money. You know, definitely be getting involved in terms of that, because you guys could use it, right?
Yeah, and we our nonprofit for these events and stuff like that. It's theautspotfoundation.org. So definitely check that out.
That's
as well.
The new nonprofit.
That's the nonprofit. Yeah.
Okay, and. My question is, so this came and it morphed into this thing that you weren't even expecting. What's next, and what's on your wish list?
A lot. There's definitely a lot on my wish list, on our wish list. I think one of the biggest things that, you know, we have stuff that works on the website that we've kept very stable and we haven't made changes to. I want to encourage all parents out there, you know, the autism community, professionals, parents, give us advice. What would you want in a community? Let us know a feature that you would recommend. Post it on our Facebook fan page, Twitter us. Whatever you think might help, and help us with this cause, you know, help us with in the world of autism. Definitely let us know. And we do read every single email. And personally, are you asking me what I would like to see also?
Yes, what would you like to see?
One of the biggest things that from the first day that we started is we have a email that we put on our brochures on our website. It's info@theautspot.com, and at least every few days, every couple of days, we have a parent who, you know, different parents who would message us and ask us, is there anything for adults with autism? My son is graduating high school, my son is graduating college. I mean, I'm trying. I think we all are trying. It's very difficult. There are not that many resources out there for kids with autism who are beginning adulthood, and I think that's very unfortunate, but also very encouraging, because we know how many kids are diagnosed, and something has to be done about it. I think. I don't know, a lot of parents are inquiring about resources, and it's not only California, it's a nationwide problem.
I actually think we have more than they have.
Exactly.
And that's pitiful.
Exactly, and it's definitely not that great here, and I think that's one of the biggest problems, because you have these kids that are diagnosed today or 3 years ago or 4 years ago. They're eventually going to grow up. And, you know, you and I were talking about earlier creating an internship program, a job program. There's just a lot of things out there that, you know, we could do, because these kids I've seen kids firsthand work. I've seen kids become accountants. You know, you know, some go to college. There are educated kids on the spectrum. You know, we talked about drawing, singing. There's definitely different avenues you could take to, you know, help this problem out, overcome this problem. So I think with the growth of, you know, the Autspot and us slowly drifting a little bit and kids on the spectrum signing in and talking to one another, I definitely want to take the different approach and begin trying to create some resources out there for young adults with autism.
Yes, and you and I have been talking for over a year about, but you know, you're busy and I'm busy, but
yeah.
on the radio show, I have had in the past interns from the local college that would work on the radio show, and was very rewarding for me. I think much more for me than it was for them, to have the opportunity to see what comes down the path, you know, and to just be in their presence is and was a wonderful thing, and thinking about how many of our kids need that kind of a work environment to, you know, see what kinds of things that they want to do. And I know lots of people who have businesses who say, I would have time for this amount to support, because let's face it, you have to be willing to support, and that's a little bit hard, but that they would be willing to, but to have a intern post board that would be something that international, that people could say, I'm looking for an intern, or somebody could say, I'm looking for an internship. And so eventually we'll have to, you know, put heads together, because I think it's a great idea and one that would be useful to a lot of people.
Definitely.
When I think about, my son's about to be 9, and I'm thinking about, you know, 8-10 years down the road, I'm going to want to send him to do an internship with somebody who's going to be kind and considerate and helpful, but not so kind and considerate that he doesn't get a good experience out of it and learn something. So, well, you know, we'll continue to work on that. And you're younger and have more energy than I am, so I
need your help, though.
I'll help, but I'll leave it in your capable hands.
No, of course. But no, I definitely, it's something I want to get started with.
I do too. I mean, it's something that keeps...
it's definitely something that's needed.
Yeah, and it keeps biting at the back of my head. But I'm amazed at what you guys have accomplished. What's 2 years?
A little over 2 years.
A little over 2 years. It's really amazing. But the thing that I'm most struck by is that you had this expectation, you started, and you thought that it was going to be a certain thing. How has your life changed now you're a part of this community, whether you meant to be or not? Well, this is a large part of your day.
I know. Well, like I said, it's I'm not, you know, it never hit home. It was never personal. I didn't have anyone affected with autism, but it seems like I do now. You know, you're affiliated with this community every day. It becomes a habit waking up in the morning and reading the most recent news. You know what's going on. You know better than anybody. There's stuff popping up every day on the internet, and just it's kind of it's definitely we're going to be attached to autism for the rest of our lives. You know. No matter what the circumstances are.
And how has that changed you?
I'm more helpful, I feel like, towards others. You know, I definitely, I'll be the first one to say that, you know, 10 years ago I'd go outside and, you know, go to the mall or whatever and see kids screaming or tantrums of some sort, and you look twice and you're like, what's going on? But now it's kind of like you see it and you understand.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge part of it, is just awareness. You know, parents need to get out. Don't be afraid what other people think. Eventually, you know, I didn't know, but now I do know, and I think more and more people are going to know that it's autism, it's okay. And I think
and have compassion without
judgment. That's the biggest thing. We were working a little bit with AMC theaters. They're doing these, like, you know, the sensory field movies where they close down movie theaters and run a movie only for kids with autism and on the spectrum. I think that's amazing. That's a huge advancement. I think it lets the parents get out of the house, the kids are comfortable in the movie theater, and just like events like that, little things like that, just opening up your eyes and realizing that it's autism, you know, so don't worry about it. Just go on with your day. And I think more and more people are accepting it and, you know, are aware of the situation, so that's important, definitely.
Can I tell you the one thing that I hear resoundingly from parents over and over and over again that it seems like nobody's been able to figure out is how to have a babysitter for date night. The person who figures out how to get babysitters that are trained to deal with autism so that parents can have a date night.
From what I hear, that's important. I'm not married, but I know parents want time to themselves and just, you know, still have that spark and whatever and go out. And finding babysitters, I don't know.
I know, everybody, it's a conundrum. But I'm telling you, just as you said, what do parents want? Like, the person who figures that out is going to be a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. And they'll have changed the world because you'll have more marriages that stay intact.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, which is a great gift. In any case, we're out of our time, but thank you so much for being here. We'll have you back on the show again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Maybe you can bring Deli
with
you next time so that we can get to sit and talk with him too and hear his point of view on things. But tell him thank you, and thank you for all the work that you guys do. Make sure that all of you go and check out theautspot.com.
Thank you so much.
And register there.
All right.
Thank you. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back to finish out the show. Stick with us.
Hi, my name is Monique Erickson. I'm a senior supervisor here at CARD in the training department.
For parents using skills, how should they structure a day of learning?
I think when you're looking at that, what you want to make sure you're doing is you have a very well-balanced, comprehensive program. And what I mean by that is when we're designing programs and using the curriculum, you're making sure that you're hitting all the appropriate curriculum areas. So you're not just doing, you know, a ton of lessons from the motor department or the curriculum area, and that's all you've done in the day. A program should be well balanced, meaning you've hit all the domains. You have language skills if those are appropriate, which most of these programs are very heavily in language. You're going to have some language, you have social, play, all the different curriculum areas. You want to make sure that you are pulling from all those areas so that you have a very well-balanced program that meets the needs of your child, and you're not just focusing on one domain of those of that curriculum and creating more splinter skills that may already be present.
How many lessons should they do before giving the child a break?
Well, you definitely want to incorporate breaks into the session, and I would say that they're going to naturally occur if you're running your sessions appropriately, meaning you're going to present a lesson and you're going to need to collect data on that. So when you present the lesson and you have opportunity to take your data, you can allow that child a brief break while you catch up, collect your data, and get prepared for the next program. That's going to allow a couple minutes for them to go do something different, have a little break before you call them back for the next lesson. You definitely don't want to be calling them back to move forward on the next lesson if you're not ready.
How many total hours a week should somebody be doing with a child?
You know, that's a very child-specific question. I can't really answer how many hours per day your child should have. That is something you would want to go do an assessment for and get an intake. At a place like CARD, you could go and schedule a time to do an intake, and once they've had an opportunity to assess your child, then they will come up with an appropriate recommendation for what number of hours is best for your child. There are some general things that we know. There's a huge body of research at this point that really supports that for this intervention to be effective and to get the best outcomes, it needs to be intensive. And what they mean by intensive is you're generally receiving at least 25 hours per week, up to 40. After 40, there's no really support that that's going to be any more effective. So somewhere between 25 hours per week and 40 hours per week may be something you might here as being the number of hours that you're shooting for an individual. But again, it's completely individualized. There's lots of factors that go into play when coming up with a recommendation for that. They're going to look at the child's age, what is their current availability, what is the parent's availability, what kind of skill deficits and behavioral excesses are we dealing with at the start of the program. So is there a lot of intensive maladaptive behaviors that we need to get under control before we can really do some effective learning? If that is not the case, then just really looking at all those factors, availability, parents' availability, age, all those things come into play, and a professional would need to look at those things in addition to doing probably a skills assessment to find out what number of hours best meets your child.
What kinds of things should we take into consideration when making those kinds of decisions?
If there's a skill in your child's program, it needs to be done frequently enough for you to have enough learning opportunities for that skill to get better. So if you have something in the program and you're only doing it every few days, it's not going to be presented enough opportunities for that skill to actually move forward in a reasonable amount of learning time. So you should be getting to your programs or the programs that are in that child's lessons in his program, frequently every day, I would say. But if you're not getting to all of them, some things you want to think about is there too many programs in this book? Do I not have enough time to really reasonably get through this many programs? Maybe that's the case. Or maybe some programs are requiring more time than others, and you always want to think about the quality of the teaching session that you're doing versus just trying to plow through 20 programs in an hour. So those are some things that I would consider.
Should a parent only do lessons from one area of the curriculum a day, or should they do from all different kinds of areas?
When you're looking at the lessons in your child's program, it's important to take a step back and look at them and prioritize. What are you going to be working on, and what do you want to incorporate into your program? There is a wonderful video that's on the Skills website that will help look at those factors and help you decide what is going to be the best effective use of your child's time, and help you pick and prioritize those programs so that you are working on the right number of programs and you're using your time wisely and effectively.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're here at the end of the show, and you know I like to end every show, if possible, with a little parent-to-parent moment. You know, we heard a lot of different things so far this week, things that we can do. I always like to remind you guys that depending on where you are in this journey, have your expectations match where you are. If you are in the beginning and you're just suspecting that there is an issue with your child and you're attempting to get a diagnosis, that's where you need to focus all of your energy. That anything that you do starts at home, and we all want you to deal with what's at home first. After you've had an opportunity to deal with what's at home, then you can turn around and say, okay, what can I do for somebody else? But it starts at home, and when we try to take too much on at a time, you know, it's stress making, and we can't be good at everything at the same time. This is stuff that I have to remind myself on a daily basis, that I'm here and I'm part of this community and I want to help you, but don't kid yourself. My child is at home, and I know that I got to show up for him on a regular basis and make sure that he's a priority. And I expect and want you to do the same thing. We got to deal with what's at home. And when we do, I think that makes us of more use to everybody when we can turn around and help. At least that's what I hope. But so when we talk about, well, you know, you could be attending this, or you could do that, or, you know, you can have a bake sale and donate the money to this, that, or the other thing, I want you to know that that's always through the filter of if you are in that point on this journey. And our expectation is that if you have little ones and you're doing that early intensive behavior intervention, that's all you can do. I'm giving you permission to say that that's all you could do. I remember somebody talking about a certain person, I'm not going to say who it was, but they were saying, I think, and it was a person very in public, and they were saying, I think she may have taken on too much. And that when you have things in your life that happen, you gotta circle wagons, take care of at home, and that's when you say to the PTA, I'm sorry, but I can't run the bake sale this year because I got something that I gotta take care of. So do what you can, but one of the things that you can do wherever you are on the spectrum is to register for something like the Spot, where you go in and you're gaining resources, being a part of the community. And what's great about that is that right now, all that it may do for you is be a great resource, which that's a lot, right? But later on, when it, you know, at some point, you're going to have enough of a good day that you're going to see something that somebody else posted and be able to say, you know what, we went through that, and here's how we got through it, and start in that way so that you can build to a place where you are helping the people around you. So important, though, that you not overwhelm yourself. As one of the main people on your child's team, you have a responsibility to take care of your child and to take care of yourself, right? And you being exhausted because you're up until 3 o'clock in the morning trying to help somebody else may not be the best choice for right now, really, or ever, right? So take that for what it's worth and focus on what you can do today, starting with the people at home. I want to remind you that as this show ends, the conversation continues and continues and continues. So in all the different ways that you're watching the show, you can be writing into us via email, and we'll answer your question on the next show and send you the written response. You can be calling in, you can Skype in, you can Facebook, you can tweet us, all those wonderful ways that you can be in touch with us. Even if you have a question for Greg, we have a way of getting a hold of Greg, so if you want to ask a question, we can pose that question to him and come back with your answer. That's true with anybody that we have on the show. So ask away, tell us what you want, what you need, what you don't need. I want to remind you that tomorrow, we got a couple of things on our plate for tomorrow. We're going to have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. It's Friday, so Research Fridays at 11 o'clock. But I believe we're also going to have a special guest with us at 10:30 via Skype, talking about an opportunity that we have to help a group of people who are making a film based on autism in the Ukraine. And so we're hoping to have them with us tomorrow at around 10:30 and tell you how you can do something that doesn't cost you anything and help for awareness for autism in the Ukraine to happen with one little quick click of a button. Won't that be awesome? So look for that tomorrow at 10:30. And then I know that on Monday, we're going to have a special guest with us. Merrick Williams is going to be with us talking about a really awesome new opportunity for those of you at home. You hear me talk about skills and how I'm such a fan of skills. And they have a new promotion for families that you may qualify for the summer. You guys have been asking about what can I do to help my child to not only grow during the summer, but not have that dreaded shrinkage where you lose skills because you've lost services. I think this is really going to help us bridge the gap. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that on Monday. But as I said, we're going to be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. and at 11 o'clock we'll have the wonderful Dr. Jonathan Tarbox talking about research. I hope that you guys are participating in the conversation, and if you're not, I want to know why. Let us know what you need. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.